tedious parties they give, don't they?
Horribly tedious. Never know why I go. Never know why I go anywhere.
I come here to be educated.
Oh, I hate being educated.
So do I. It puts one almost in level with the commercial classes, doesn't it? But dear Gertrude Chiltern is always telling me that I should have some serious purpose in life. So I come here to try to find one.
I hardly see anyone here tonight whom one could possibly consider a serious purpose. The man who took me into dinner talked to me about his wife the whole time.
How very trivial of him.
Terribly trivial. And what did your man talk about?
About myself.
And were you interested?
Not in the smallest degree.
What martyrs we are, Margaret.
And how well it becomes us, Olivia.
Lord Cavendish.
Good evening, Lady Chiltern. Has my good-for-nothing son been here?
I don't think Lord Goring has arrived yet.
Why do you call Lord Goring good for nothing?
Because he leads such an idle life.
Well, how can you say such a thing? He rides in a row at 10 o'clock in the morning, goes to the opera 3 times a week, changes his clothes at least 5 times a day, and dines out every night of the season. Well, you don't call that leading an idle life, now do you?
You are a very charming young lady.
How sweet of you to say that, Lord Caversham. Do come to us more often. You know we are always at home on Wednesdays, and you look so well with your star.
Never go anywhere now. Sick of London society. Shouldn't mind being introduced to my own tailor. He always votes on the right side, but objects strongly to being sent down to dinner with my wife's milliner. Never could stand Lady Caversham's bonnets.
I love London society. I think it has much improved. It is entirely composed now of beautiful idiots and brilliant lunatics. Just what society should be.
And which one is Goring? Beautiful idiot or the other thing?
I've been obliged for the present to put Lord Goring into a class quite by himself. But he's developing charmingly.
Into what?
Well, I hope to let you know very soon, Lord Caversham.
Lady Markby, Mrs Cheveley.
Oh, good evening, dear Gertrude. So kind of you to let me bring my friend, Mrs Cheveley. Two such charming women should know each other.
I think Mrs Cheveley and I have met before. I did not know she had married a second time.
Oh, nowadays people marry as often as they can, don't they? It is most fashionable. Dear Lady Basildon, how is the Earl? Brain still weak, I suppose? Well, that is only to be expected, is it not? His good father was just the same. There is nothing like race, is there?
But have we really met before, Lady Chiltern? I can't remember where. I've been out of London so long. We were at school together, Mrs Cheveley.
Indeed. I've forgotten all about my school days. I have the vague impression that they were detestable.
I'm not surprised.
Do you know, I'm quite looking forward to meeting your clever husband, Lady Chiltern. Since he's been at the Foreign Office, he's been so much talked of in Vienna. They actually succeed in spelling his name right on the newspapers. That in itself is fame on the continent.
I hardly think there will be much in common between you and my husband, Mrs Cheveley.
Chère madame, qu'est-ce please? I have not seen you since Berlin.
Not since Berlin, by God, 5 years ago.
And you are younger and more beautiful than ever. How do you manage it?
By making it a rule only to talk to perfectly charming people like yourself.
You flatter me. You butter me, as they say.
Do they say that? You're dreadful at them.
Yes, they have a wonderful language. It should be more widely known.
Good evening, Lady Markby. I hope you have brought Sir John with you.
Oh, I've brought a much more charming person than Sir John. Sir John's temper, since he has taken seriously to politics, has become quite unbearable. Really, now that the House of Commons is trying to become useful, it does a great deal of harm.
I hope not, Lady Markby. At any rate, we do our best to waste the public time, don't we? But who is this charming person you have been so kind as to bring to us?
Oh, her name is Mrs Cheveley. One of the Dorsetshire Cheveleys, I suppose, but I really don't know. Families are so mixed nowadays. Indeed, as a rule, everybody turns out to be somebody else.
Mrs Cheveley, I seem to know that name.
Oh, she has just arrived from Vienna.
Ah, yes, I think I know whom you mean.
She goes everywhere there and has the most pleasant scandals about all her friends. I really must go to Vienna next winter. I hope there is a good chef at the embassy.
If there is not, the ambassador will certainly have to be recalled. Pray point out Mrs Cheveley to me. I should like to see her.
Oh, let me introduce you. My dear, Sir Robert Chiltern is dying to know you.
Everyone is dying to know the brilliant Mrs Cheveley. Our attachés at Vienna write to us about nothing else.
Thank you, Sir Robert. An acquaintance that begins with a compliment is sure to develop into a real friendship. It starts in the right manner, and I find I know Lady Chiltern already.
Really?
Yes, she's just reminded me that we were at school together. I remember it perfectly now. She always got the Good Conduct Prize. I have a distinct recollection of Lady Chiltern always getting the Good Conduct Prize.
And which prizes did you get, Mrs Cheveley?
My prizes came a little later in life. I don't think any of them were for good conduct. I forget.
I'm sure they were for something charming.
Oh, I don't know that women are always rewarded for being charming. I think they're usually punished for it. Certainly more women grow old nowadays through the faithfulness of their admirers than for anything else. At least that is the only way I can account for the terribly haggard look of most of the pretty women in London.
What an appalling philosophy that sounds. To attempt to classify you, Mrs Cheveley, would be an impertinence, but may I ask, at heart, are you an optimist or a pessimist? Those seem to be the only two fashionable religions left to us nowadays.
No, I'm neither. Optimism begins with a broad grin and pessimism ends with blue spectacles. Besides, they're both merely poses.
You prefer to be natural.
Sometimes, but it is a difficult pose to keep up.
What would those modern psychological novelists of whom we hear so much say to such a theory as that?
The strength of women comes from the fact that psychology can't explain us. Men can be analysed. Women merely adored.
You think science cannot grapple with the problem of women?
Science can never grapple with the irrational. That is why it has no future before it in this world.
And women represent the irrational.
Well-dressed women do.
I fear I could hardly agree with you there. But do, sit down. And now tell me, what makes you leave your brilliant Vienna for our gloomy London? Or perhaps the question is indiscreet.
Questions are never indiscreet. Answers sometimes are.
Well, at any rate, may I know if it is politics or pleasure?
Politics are my pleasure. You see, nowadays it is not fashionable for one to flirt till one is 40, or to be romantic till one is 45. So we poor women who are under 30, or say we are, have nothing open to us but politics or philanthropy. And philanthropy seems to me to have become simply a refuge of those who wish to annoy their fellow creatures. I prefer politics, and I think they are more becoming.
A political life is certainly a noble career.
Sometimes. And sometimes it is a clever game, Sir Robert. And sometimes it is a great nuisance.
Which do you find it?
A combination of all three.
Allow me. But you have not yet told me what makes you honour London so suddenly. Our season is almost over.
Oh, I don't care for London season. It is too matrimonial. People are either hunting for husbands or hiding from them. I wanted to meet you. It is quite true. You know what a woman's curiosity is. Almost as great as a man's. I wanted immensely to meet you and to ask you to do something for me.
Well, I hope it is not a little thing, Mrs Cheveley. I find that little things are so very difficult to do.
No, I don't think it's quite a little thing.
I'm so glad. Do tell me what it is.
Later on. And now, may I walk through your beautiful house? I hear your pictures are charming. Poor old Baron Arnheim. You remember the Baron? Used to tell me you had some wonderful clothes.
Did you know Baron Arnheim well?
Intimately, did you?
At one time.
Wonderful man, wasn't he?
He was very remarkable in many ways.
I often think it's a pity he never wrote his memoirs. They would have been most interesting.
Yes, he certainly knew men and cities well, like the old Greek.
Without the dreadful disadvantage of having Penelope waiting for him at home.
Lord Goring. Oh, my dear Arthur, Mrs. Cheveley, allow me to introduce to you Lord Goring, the idlest man in London.
I have met Lord Goring before.
Well, I didn't think you'd remember me, Mrs. Cheveley.
My memory is under admirable control. And are you still a bachelor?
I believe so.
How very romantic.
Ooh, I'm not a romantic at all. I'm not old enough. I leave romance to my seniors.
Lord Goring is the result of Boodle's Club, Mrs. Cheveley.
He reflects every credit on the institution.
May I ask, are you staying in London long?
That depends. Partly on the weather, partly on the cooking, and partly on Sir Robert.
You are not going to plunge us into a European war, I hope.
And there's no danger at present. You are very late.
Have you missed me?
Awfully.
Oh, then I'm very sorry I didn't stay way longer. I like being missed.
How very selfish of you.
Yes, I'm very selfish.
You're always telling me of your bad qualities, Lord Goring.
Oh, I have not told you the half of them as of yet, Miss Mabel.
Are the others very bad?
Quite dreadful. When I think of them at night, I go to sleep at once.
Well, I for one delight in your bad qualities. I wouldn't have you part with one of them.
How very nice of you to say so. Then again, you're always so very nice. By the way, Miss Mabel, I do want to ask you, who brought Mrs. Cheveley here? The woman in red that went into the other room with your brother.
Oh, I think a Lady Markby brought her. Why do you ask?
I haven't seen her in years, that is all.
What an absurd reason.
Well, all reasons are absurd.
What sort of woman is she?
Oh, she's a genius in the daytime and a beauty at night.
I dislike her already.
Well, that shows your admirable good taste.
Ah, the English young lady is the dragon of good taste, is she not? Quite the dragon of good taste.
So the newspapers are always telling us.
I read all of your English newspapers. I find them so amusing.
Then, my dear Jock, you must certainly read between the lines.
I should like to, but my professor objects. Mademoiselle, may I have the pleasure of escorting you to the music room?
Oh, delighted, Viscount, quite delighted. Well, aren't you coming to the music room?
Oh, not if they're playing any music, Miss Mabel.
Oh, but the music is in German, you wouldn't understand it.
Well, sir, what are you doing here? Wasting your life as usual, I suppose. You should be in bed, sir. You keep too late hours. I heard of you the other night at Lady Rufford's dancing till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Only 3:45, Father.
Can't make out how you stand London society. The thing has gone to the dogs. A lot of damn nobodies talking about nothing.
I like talking about nothing, Father. It's really the only thing I know anything about.
You seem to me to be living entirely for pleasure.
Oh, what else is there to live for, Father? Nothing ages like happiness.
You are heartless, sir. Quite heartless.
Not, Father. Ah, good evening, Lady Basildon.
Are you here? I had no idea you came to these political parties.
Oh, I adore political parties. They're the only place left to us where people don't talk politics.
I delight in talking politics. I talk them all day long. But I can't bear listening to them. I have no idea how these unfortunate men in the House can stand these long debates.
Oh, by never listening.
Really?
Well, of course. You see, it is a very dangerous thing listening to a man. If a man listens, he may be convinced. And a man convinced by an argument is a thoroughly unreasonable person.
That accounts for so much in men that I've never understood. And so much in women that their husbands never appreciate in them.
Our husbands never appreciate anything in us. We have to go to others for that.
Yes, always to others, have we not?
And those are the views of the two women with the most admirable husbands in London.
That is exactly what we can't stand. My Reginald is quite hopelessly faultless. He is really unendurably so at times. There's not the smallest element of excitement in knowing him.
Oh, how terrible. Really, the thing should be more widely known.
Basildon is quite the same. He's as domestic as if he were a bachelor.
Oh, my poor Olivia. We have married perfect husbands. We are well punished for it.
I should have thought it were the husbands that were being punished.
Oh, dear no. They are as happy as possible. And as for trusting us, well, it is tragic how much they trust us.
Perfectly tragic.
Or comic, Lady Basildon.
Certainly not comic, Lord Goring. How unkind of you to suggest such a thing.
I see Lord Goring is in the camp of the enemy as usual. I saw him talking to that Mrs Cheveley when he came in.
Ah. A handsome woman, Mrs Cheveley.
Please do not praise other women in our presence. You might wait for us to do that.
I did wait.
Well, we are not going to praise her. I hear she went to the opera on Monday night and told Tommy Rufford at supper that as far as she could see, London society was entirely made up of dowdies and dandies.
She's quite right too, you know. The men are all dowdies and the women are all dandies, aren't they?
Oh, do you really think that is what Mrs Cheveley meant?
Oh, of course. And a very sensible remark for Mrs Cheveley to make too.
Why are you talking about Mrs. Cheveley? Everybody is talking about Mrs. Cheveley. Lord Goring says... What do you say, Lord Goring, about Mrs. Cheveley? Oh, I remember that she is a genius in the daytime and a beauty at night.
What a horrid combination. So very unnatural.
I like looking at geniuses and listening to beautiful people.
Oh, that is morbid of you, Mrs Marchmont.
I am so glad to hear you say that. Marchmont and I have been married for 7 years, and he has never once told me that I was morbid. Men are so painfully unobserved.
I have always said, dear Margaret, that you are the most morbid person in all of London.
Ah, but you are always so sympathetic, Olivia.
Is it morbid to have desire for food? I have a great desire for food. Lord Goring, won't you give me some supper?
Oh, with pleasure.
How horrid you have been. You have never talked to me the whole evening.
How could I? You went away with a child diplomatist.
You might have followed us. Pursuit would have been only polite. I don't think I like you at all this evening.
Oh. I like you immensely.
Well, I wish you would show it in a more marked way.
Oh, Olivia, I have a curious feeling of absolute faintness. I think I should like some supper very much. I know I should like some supper.
I am positively dying for supper, Margaret.
Men are so horribly selfish. They never think of these things.
Men are so grossly material. Grossly material.
May I have the honour of taking you down to supper, Countess?
I never take supper, Vicomte. But I will come down with you with pleasure.
I am so fond of eating. I am very English in all my tastes.
You look quite English, Vicomte. Quite English.
Like some supper, Mrs Marchmont?
Thank you, Mr. Montford. I never touch supper. But I will sit beside you and watch you.
I don't know that I'd like being watched when I am eating.
Then I'll watch someone else.
I don't know that I should like that either.
Pray, Mr. Montford, do not make these painful scenes of jealousy in public.
Will you be going to any of our country houses before you leave England, Mrs Cheveley?
No, I can't stand your English house parties. In England, people actually try to be brilliant at breakfast. That is so dreadful of them. Only dull people are brilliant at breakfast. And the family skeleton is always reading the family prayers. My stay really depends on you, Sir Robert.
Seriously?
Quite seriously. I wanted to talk to you about a great political and financial scheme. About the Argentine Canal Company, in fact.
What a tedious practical subject for you to talk about, Mrs Cheveley.
I like tedious practical subjects. What I don't like are tedious, practical people. There is a wide difference. Besides, you are interested, I know, in international canal schemes. You were Lord Bradley's secretary, weren't you, when the government bought Suez Canal shares?
Yes, but the Suez Canal was a very great and splendid undertaking. It gave us our direct route to India. It had imperial value. It was necessary that we should have control. This Argentine scheme is nothing but a commonplace stock exchange swindle.
A speculation, Sir Robert. A brilliant, daring speculation.
Believe me, Mrs. Cheveley, it is a swindle. Let us call things by their proper names. It makes matters simpler. We have all the information about it at the Foreign Office. In fact, I sent out a special commission to inquire into the matter privately, and they report that the works are hardly begun. And as for the money already subscribed, nobody seems to know what has become of it. The whole thing is a second Panama, and with not a quarter the chance of success that miserable affair ever had. I hope you have not invested any money into it. I am sure you are far too clever to have done that.
I've invested very largely in it.
Who could have advised you to do such a foolish thing?
Your old friend and mine.
Who?
Baron Arnheim.
Yes, I remember hearing at the time of his death that the Baron had been mixed up in the whole affair.
It was his last romance, his last but one, to do him justice.
But you have not yet seen my Carots, Mrs. Cheveley. They are in the music room. Carots seem to go with music, don't they? May I show them to you?
I'm not in the mood for silver twilights or rose pink dawns. I want to talk business.
I fear I have no advice to give you, Mrs. Cheveley, except to interest yourself in something less dangerous. The success of the canal depends, of course, on the attitude of England, and I intend to lay the report of the Commission before the House tomorrow night.
That you must not do. In your own interest, Sir Robert, to say nothing of mine, you must not do that.
In my own interest? My dear Mrs. Cheveley, what do you mean?
Sir Robert, I'll be quite frank with you. I want you to withdraw the report that you had intended to lay before the House on the grounds that you have reason to believe that the commissioners had been prejudiced or misinformed or something. Then I want you to say a few words to the effect that the government is going to reconsider the question, and that you have reason to believe that the canal, if completed, will be of great international value. You know the sort of thing ministers say in cases of this kind. A few ordinary platitudes will do. In modern life, nothing produces such an effect as good platitudes. It makes the whole world again. Will you do that for me?
Mrs. Cheveley, you cannot be serious in making me such a proposition.
I'm quite serious.
Pray allow me to believe that you are not.
Ah, but I am. And if you do what I ask, I will pay you very handsomely.
Pay me?
Yes.
I'm afraid I don't quite understand what you mean.
How very disappointing. I've come all the way from Vienna in order that you should thoroughly understand me.
I fear I don't.
My dear Sir Robert, you are a man of the world, and you have a price. I suppose everybody has nowadays. The drawback is that most people are dreadfully expensive. I know I am. I'll hope you'll be more reasonable in your terms.
If you will allow me, I will call your carriage for you. You have lived so long abroad, Mrs. Cheveley, that you seem to be unable to realize that you are talking to an English gentleman.
Realize I am talking to a man who laid the foundation of his fortune by selling to a stock exchange speculator a cabinet secret.
What do you mean?
I mean that I know the real origin of your wealth and career. And I've got the letter too.
What letter?
The letter you wrote to Baron Arnheim when you were Lord Bradley's secretary, telling the Baron to buy Suez Canal shares. A letter written 3 days before the government announced its own purchase.
It is not true.
You thought that letter had been destroyed. Foolish of you. It is in my possession.
The affair to which you allude is no more than a speculation. The House had not yet passed the bill. It might have been rejected.
It was a swindle, Sir Robert. Let us call things by their proper names. It makes matters simpler. And now I'm going to sell you that letter, and the price I ask for it is your public support of the Argentine scheme. You made your fortune out of one canal. You must help me and my friends make our fortune out of another.
It is infamous what you propose. Infamous!
Oh no, this is the game of life that we all have to play, Sir Robert, sooner or later.
I cannot do what you ask me.
You mean you cannot help doing it? You know you are standing on the edge of precipice, and it is not for you to make terms, it is for you to accept them. Supposing you refuse?
What then?
What then? My dear Sir Robert, what then? You are ruined, that is all. Remember to what point your Puritanism in England has brought you. In old days, nobody pretended to be better than one's neighbour. In fact, to be better than one's neighbours was considered excessively vulgar and middle class. Nowadays, with our modern mania for morality, everyone has to pose as a paragon of purity, incorruptibility, and all the other 7 deadly virtues. And what is the result? You go all down like 9 pins, one after another. Not a year passed in England without somebody disappearing. Scandals used to lend charm, or at least interest to a man. Now they crush him. And yours is a very nasty scandal. You couldn't survive it. If it were known that as a young man, secretary to the great and important minister, you sold a cabinet secret and that was the origin of your wealth and career, you would be hounded out of public life. You would disappear completely. And after all, Sir Robert, why should you sacrifice your entire future rather than deal diplomatically with your enemy? For the moment, I am your enemy, and I am much stronger than you are. The big battalions are on my side. You have a splendid position. But it is your splendid position that makes you so vulnerable. You can't defend it, and I'm an attack. Of course, I've not talked morality to you. You must admit, in fairness, I've spared you that. Years ago, you did a clever, unscrupulous thing. It turned out a great success. You owe to it your fortune and position. And now you've got to pay for it. Sooner or later, we've all got to pay for what we do. You have to pay now. Before I leave to this house tonight, you've got to promise me to suppress your report and to speak in the house in favour of this scheme.
What you ask is impossible.
You must make it possible. You are going to make it possible, Sir Robert. You know what your English newspapers are like. Suppose that when I leave this house tonight, I drive down to some newspaper office, give them this scandal and the proofs of it. Think of their loathsome joy, of the delight they would have in dragging you down. Think of the hypocrite with his greasy smile penning his leading article and arranging the foulness of the public placard.
Stop! You want me to withdraw the report of the commission and to make a speech stating that I believe that there are possibilities in this scheme?
That is agreed.
If it is money you want, I will give you any sum if you wish.
My dear Sir Robert, even you are not rich enough to buy back your past. No man is.
I will not do what you ask me. I will not.
You have to. If you don't...
Wait a minute. Wait. What did you say? You said you would give me back my letter, didn't you?
Yes. That is agreed. I'll be in the ladies' gallery tomorrow night at 11:30. If by that time you will have heaps of opportunity, you have made an announcement in the house in the terms I wish, I shall hand you back your letter with the prettiest thanks, or at any rate the most suitable compliment I can think of. I intend to play quite fairly with you, Sir Robert. One should always play fairly when one has the winning cards. The Baron taught me that, amongst other things.
You must let me have some time to consider your proposal.
No, you must settle now.
Give me a week. 3 days!
Impossible. I've got to telegraph to Vienna tonight.
My God. What brought you into my life?
circumstances.
I consent. The report shall be withdrawn. I will arrange for a question to be put to me on the subject.
Thank you. I knew we should come to an amicable agreement. I understood your nature from the first. I analyzed you, thought you did not adore me. And now, will you get me my carriage? I see people are coming up from supper, and Englishmen always get romantic after a meal, and that bores me dreadfully.
Well, dear Mrs. Cheveley, and have you enjoyed yourself? Sir Robert is very entertaining, is he not?
Most entertaining. I've enjoyed my talk with him immensely.
He has had a very interesting and brilliant career, and he has married a most admirable wife. Lady Chiltern is a woman of the very highest principles, I am glad to say. I'm a little too old now myself to trouble about setting a good example, but I always admire people who do, and Lady Chiltern has a very ennobling effect on life, though her dinner parties are rather dull sometimes. But one can't have everything, can one? And now, dear, I must go. Shall I call for you tomorrow?
Thanks.
We might drive in the park at 5. Everything looks so fresh now in the park.
Except the people.
Yes. Perhaps the people are a little jaded. I have often observed that the season as it goes on produces a kind of softening of the brain. However, I think anything is better than high intellectual pressure. That is the most unbecoming thing there is. It makes the noses of all the young girls so particularly large. And there's nothing so difficult to marry as a large nose. Men don't like them. Goodbye, dear. Goodbye, Gertrude.
Good evening, Lady Chiltern.
What a charming house you have, Lady Chiltern. I've spent a delightful evening in it. It has been so interesting getting to know your husband.
Why did you wish to meet my husband, Mrs. Cheveley?
I will tell you. I wanted to interest him in the Argentine Canal scheme, of which I dare say you've heard, and I found him most susceptible. Susceptible to reason, I mean. A rare thing in a man, I converted him in 10 minutes. He's going to make a speech in the House tomorrow night in favour of the idea. We must go to the ladies' gallery and hear him. It will be a great occasion.
There must be some mistake. That scheme could never have my husband's support.
Oh, I assure you it is all settled. I don't regret my tedious journey from Vienna now. It has been a great success. But, of course, for the next 24 hours, the whole thing is a dead secret.
A secret? Between whom?
Between your husband and myself.
Your carriage is here, Mrs. Cheveley.
Thanks. Good evening, Lady Chiltern. Good night, Lord Goring. I'm staying at Claridge's. Don't you think you might leave a card?
If you wish it, Mrs. Cheveley.
Don't be so solemn about it, or I should be obliged to leave a card on you. I suppose in England that would hardly be considered en rigueur. Abroad we are more civilized. Won't you see me down, Sir Robert? Now we both have the same interest at heart, we shall be great friends, I hope.
What a horrid woman.
You should go to bed, Miss Mabel.
Lord Goring, you're always ordering me out of the room. I think it's most courageous of you, especially as I am not going to bed for hours. You can come and sit down if you like, and talk about anything in the world, apart from the Royal Academy, Mrs. Cheveley, or novels in Scotch dialect. They are not improving subjects. What is that? Someone has dropped a beautiful diamond brooch. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? I wish it was mine. Gertrude never lets me wear anything but pearls, and I'm thoroughly sick of pearls. They make one look so plain, so good, and so intellectual. I wonder who the brooch belongs to.
But I wonder who dropped it.
It's a very beautiful brooch.
It is a handsome bracelet.
Oh, it isn't a bracelet, it's a brooch.
It can be used as a bracelet.
Oh, what are you doing?
Miss Mabel, I am going to make a very strange request of you tonight.
Pray do. I've been waiting for it all evening.
Don't mention to anyone that I've taken charge of this brooch. Should anyone write and claim it, let me know at once.
That is a strange request.
Well, you see, I gave this brooch to someone once years ago.
Oh, you did you?
Yes.
Then I shall certainly bid you good night. Good night, Gertrude.
Good night, dear. You saw whom Lady Markby brought here tonight.
Yes, it was a terrible surprise. But what did she come here for?
Apparently to try and lure Robert to uphold some fraudulent scheme in which he's interested. The Argentine Canal, in fact.
Oh, she's mistaken her man, hasn't she?
She is incapable of understanding an upright nature like my husband's.
Yes. I should fancy she'd come to grief should she try to get Robert into her toils. It is extraordinary what astounding mistakes clever women make.
I don't call women of that kind clever. I call them stupid.
Same thing often. Good night, Lady Chiltern.
You were not going, Arthur. Do stop a little.
Afraid I can't, thanks. I promised to look in at the Heart Locks. I believe they have a Mauve Hungarian band that plays Mauve Hungarian music. But I'll come around tomorrow. Goodbye.
How beautiful you look tonight, Gertrude.
Robert, it is not true, is it? You're not going to lend your support to this Argentine speculation. You couldn't.
Who told you I intended to do so?
That woman who's just gone out, Mrs Cheveley, as she calls herself now. She seemed to taunt me with it. Robert, I know this woman. You don't. We were at school together. She was untruthful and dishonest. An evil influence on anyone whose trust or friendship she could win. Oh, I hated, I despised her. And she stole things, she was a thief. She was sent away for being a thief. Why do you let her influence you?
Gertrude, what you say may be true, but it happened many years ago. It is best forgotten. Mrs Cheveley may have changed since then. After all, nobody should be entirely judged by their past.
One's past is what one is. It is the only way by which people should be judged.
That is a hard saying, Gertrude.
It is a true saying, Robert. And what did she mean by boasting that she had got you to lend your support, your name, to a thing I have heard you describe as the most dishonest and fraudulent scheme there has ever been in political life?
I was mistaken in the view I took. We all may make mistakes.
But you told me yesterday that you had received the report from the Commission and that it entirely condemned the whole thing.
I have reason now to believe that the Commission may have been prejudiced, or at any rate misinformed. And besides, Gertrude, public and private life are different things. They have different laws, they move on different lines.
They should both represent man at his highest. I see no difference between them.
In the present case, on a matter of purely practical politics, I have changed my mind. Now that is all.
All?
Yes.
Robert, it is horrible that I should have to ask you such a question. But Robert, are you telling me the whole truth?
Why do you ask me such a question?
Why do you not answer it?
Gertrude, truth is a very complex thing. And politics a very complex business. There are wheels. Within wheels, one may be under certain obligations to others that one must pay. Sooner or later in political life, one has to compromise. Everyone does.
Compromise?
Yes.
Robert, why do you talk so differently tonight from the way I've always heard you talk? Why are you changed?
I am not changed, but circumstances alter things.
Circumstances should never alter principles.
What if I told you?
What?
That it was necessary, vitally necessary.
It can never be necessary to do what is not honourable. Or if it be necessary, what is it that I've loved? But it is not. Robert, tell me it is not. Why should it be? What gain would you get? Money? We have no need of that. And money that comes from a tainted source is a degradation. Power? But power is nothing in itself. It is power to do good, satisfying that and that only. What is it then? Robert, tell me why you are going to do this dishonourable thing.
Gertrude, you have no right to use that word. I told you it is a question of rational compromise, that is all.
That is all very well for other men. Men who treat life simply as a sordid speculation. Not for you, Robert. Not for you. You are different. All your life you have stood apart from others. You have never let the world soil you. To the world as to myself, you have been an ideal always. Be that ideal still. That great inheritance throw not away. And that tower of ivory do not destroy. Robert, men can love what is beneath them. Things unworthy, stained, dishonoured. But we women worship when we love. And when we lose our worship, we lose everything. Don't kill my love for you, don't kill that.
Gertrude.
I know that there are men with horrible secrets in their lives. Men who have done some shameful thing, and who in some critical moment have to pay for it by doing some other act of shame. Oh, don't tell me you are such as they are. Robert, is there in your life any secret dishonour or disgrace? Tell me. Tell me at once that...
But what?
That our lives might drift apart.
Drift apart?
That they may be entirely separate. It would be better for us both.
Gertrude, there is nothing in my past life that you might not know.
I was sure of it, Robert. I was sure of it. But why did you say those things just now? Being someone like your real self. Don't let us ever talk about the subject again. You will write, won't you, to Mrs Cheveley, and tell her that you cannot support this scandalous scheme of hers. If you've given her any promise, you must take it back, that is all.
Must I write and tell her that?
Surely. What else is there to do?
I might see her personally, it would be better.
No, you must never see her again. She's not a woman you should ever speak to. She's not worthy to talk to a man like you. No, you must write to her now, this moment, at once, and let your letter show her that your decision is quite irrevocable.
Right this moment?
Yes.
But it is so late, it is close on 12.
It is no matter. She must know at once that she has been mistaken in you, and that you are not a man to do anything base or underhand or dishonourable. Right here, Robert. Write that you decline to support this scheme of hers as you hold it to be a dishonest scheme. Yes, write the word dishonest. She knows what that word means. Yes, that will do in the envelope. Have this letter sent at once to Claridge's Hotel. There is no answer. Robert, love gives one an instinct to things. And I feel tonight that I have saved you from something that might have been a danger to you. Something that might have made men honour you less than they do. I don't think you realise sufficiently, Robert, that you have brought into the political life of our time a nobler atmosphere, a finer attitude towards life, a freer air, of purer aims and higher ideals. I know it, Robert. For that I love you.
Oh, love me always, Gertrude. Love me always.
Well, I love you always, because you will always be worthy of love. We needs must love the highest when we see it.
Put out the lights, Mason. Put out the lights.
It is very awkward business, Robert. Very awkward indeed. You should have told your wife the whole thing. Secrets from other people's wives are a very necessary luxury in modern life. Or I'm told at least by the men at the club who were bold enough to know better. But no man should have any secret from his own wife. She invariably finds out. Women have a wonderful instinct about things. They can discover everything, except the obvious.
Arthur, I couldn't have told my wife. When could I have told her? Not last night. It would have made a lifelong separation between us. And I would have lost the love of the one woman in the world I worship. The only woman who has ever stirred love within me. No, last night would have been quite impossible. She would have turned from me in horror and in contempt.
Is Lady Chiltern as perfect as all that?
Yes, my wife is as perfect as all that.
Oh, what a pity. I'm sorry, my dear fellow, I didn't quite mean that. But if what you say about Lady Chiltern is true, I should like to have a very serious conversation about life with her.
I'm afraid it would be quite useless.
Ooh. May I try?
Yes, but nothing could make her alter her views.
Well, at the least it would be a psychological experiment.
All such experiments are terribly dangerous.
Everything is dangerous, my dear fellow. If it wasn't, life wouldn't be worth living. Well, I'm bound to say, I think you should have told her years ago.
When could I have told her? When we were engaged? Do you think she would have married me if she had known that the origin of my fortune is such as it is? That the basis of my career is such as it is? And that I had done a thing that I suppose most men would call shameful and dishonourable?
Yes, most men would call it ugly names, there's no doubt about that.
Men who every day do something of the same kind themselves. Men who each one of them have worse secrets in their own lives.
Well, that is the reason they are so pleased to find out about other people's secrets. It distracts public attention from their own.
And besides, Arthur, whom did I harm by what I did? No one.
Except yourself, Robert.
I had private information about a certain transaction contemplated by the government of the day, and I acted upon it. Private information is practically the source of every large modern fortune.
And public scandal invariably the result.
Arthur, do you think that what I did nearly 18 years ago should be brought up against me now? Do you think it fair that a man's whole career should be ruined for a fault done almost in one's boyhood? I was 22 at the time, Arthur, and I had the double misfortune of being well-born and poor, two unforgivable things nowadays. Is it fair that the folly, that the sin of one's youth, if men should choose to call it a sin, should wreck a life like mine, should place me in the pillory, should shatter all that I have worked for, all that I have built up? Is that fair, Arthur?
Life is never fair, Robert. And perhaps it is a good thing for most of us that it is not.
Every man of ambition has to fight his century with its own weapons. What this century worships is wealth. The god of this century is wealth. To succeed, one must have wealth. At all costs, one must have wealth.
You underrate yourself, Robert. Believe me, without wealth you could have succeeded just as well.
When I was old, perhaps. When I had lost my passion for power or could not use it. When I was tired, worn out, and disappointed. No, I wanted my success when I was young. Youth is the time for success, Arthur. I couldn't wait.
Yes, you certainly had your success while you were still young. Nobody's had such a brilliant success. Under Secretary of Foreign Affairs at the age of 40? It's good enough for anyone, I should imagine.
And if it is all taken away from me now, if I should lose everything over some horrible scandal, if I am if I am hounded out of public life?
Robert, how could you have sold yourself for money?
I did not sell myself for money. I nearly bought success at a great price, that is all.
Yes, you certainly bought it at a great price. But what first made you think of doing such a thing?
Baron Arnheim.
Damn scoundrel.
No, he was a man of most subtle and refined intellect. A man of culture, charm, and distinction. One of the most intellectual men I think I ever met.
I prefer a gentlemanly fool any day. There's more to be said about stupidity than most people imagine. Personally, I have a great admiration for stupidity. It is a sort of fellow feeling. But how did he do it? Tell me the whole thing.
One night, after dinner at Lord Radley's, the Baron began to talk about success in modern life as a thing that could be reduced to an absolutely definite science. With that wonderfully fascinating, quiet voice of his, he expounded to us the most terrible of all philosophies, the philosophy of power. Preached the most marvelous of gospels, the gospel of gold. I suppose he realized the effect that he had on me, for some days later he wrote and asked me to come and see him. He was living then in Park Lane, in the house that Lord Woolcombe is in now. I still remember so well how, with that strange smile on his pale, curved lips, he led me through his wonderful picture galleries, showed me his tapestries, his enamels, his jewels, his carved ivories, made me look upon the luxury of the strange loveliness in which he lived. And then he told me that luxury is nothing but a background, a painted scene in a play, and that power of other men, power over the world is the one thing worth having, the one supreme pleasure worth knowing, the one joy one never tired of. And that in our century only the rich possessed it.
A thoroughly shallow creed.
No, I didn't think so then, and I don't think so now. Wealth has given me enormous power. It gave me at the outset of my life freedom, and freedom is everything. You have never been poor, Arthur, never known what ambition is. You cannot understand what a wonderful chance the Baron gave me. Such a chance as few men get.
Fortunately for them, if one is to judge by the result. But tell me definitely, how did the Baron finally persuade you to, well, do what you did?
As I was leaving, he told me that if I was ever able to give him any private information of real value, it would make me a very rich man. I was dazed by the prospect that he held out to me, and my ambition and desire for power were at that time boundless. 6 weeks later, certain private documents passed through my hands.
State documents?
Yes.
Oh, dear Robert, I had no idea that you, of all men in the world, could have been so weak as to yield to such a temptation as Baron Arnheim held out to you.
Weak. Oh, I am sick of using that word, sick of hearing it. Weak. Do you think that it is weakness that yields to temptation? I tell you that there are horrible temptations, that it requires strength and courage to yield to risk one's whole life in a single moment, to stake it all on one throw, whether that stake be power or pleasure, I care not. There is no weakness in that. There is a horrible courage. I had that courage. I sat down that same afternoon and I wrote Baron Arnheim the letter this woman now holds. He made $750,000 off the transaction.
And you?
I received from the Baron £110,000.
You were worth more, Robert.
Yeah. That money gave me exactly what I wanted. Power over others. I entered the house immediately. The Baron advised me in finance from time to time. Within 5 years, I had tripled my fortune. Since then, everything I have touched has turned out a great success. I have had a luck in all things concerned with money so extraordinary that it has made me at times almost afraid. I remember reading once in some strange book, when the gods wish to punish us, they answer our prayers.
But tell me, Robert, did you never suffer any remorse for what you have done?
No. I felt that I had fought my century with its own weapons, and won.
You thought you'd won?
Yes, I thought so. Arthur, do you despise me for what I have told you?
I'm very sorry for you, Robert. Very sorry indeed.
I don't mean to say that I felt any remorse. I didn't. At least not remorse in the ordinary, rather silly sense of the word. But I have paid conscience money many times. I had wild hope that I might disarm destiny. The sum that Baron Arnheim first gave me I have distributed twice over in public charities since then.
Public charities! Dear me, Robert, what a great deal of harm you must have done.
Don't say that, Arthur. Don't talk like that.
Oh, never mind what I'm saying. I'm always saying what I shouldn't say. In fact, I usually say what I really think. Great mistake nowadays. It makes one so liable to be misunderstood. As regards to this terrible situation, I will help you in whatever way I can. Of course you know that.
Thank you, Arthur. Thank you. But what is to be done? What can be done?
Well, the English never enjoy a man who's always saying he's in the right, but they are very fond of a man who admits he's been in the wrong. It's one of the best things in him. However, in your case, Robert, it will not do. The money, if you will allow me to say so, is awkward. Besides, if you were to make a clean breast of the whole affair, you would never be able to talk about morality again. And in England, a man who can't talk about morality to a large, unscrupulous, immoral audience is quite over as a serious politician. There would be nothing left to him as a profession besides botany or the church. No, a confession would not do. It would ruin you.
It would ruin me, Arthur. I suppose the only thing left for it is to fight the thing out.
I was waiting for you to say that, Robert. It is the only thing you can do now, and you must begin by telling your wife the whole thing.
That I could not do.
Robert, believe me, you are wrong.
I couldn't do it, Arthur. It would kill her love for me. And now about this woman, this Mrs Cheveley. How can I defend myself against her? You knew her before, Arthur, apparently.
Yes?
Did you know her well?
So little that I got engaged to be married to her once while I was playing at the Tenleys. The whole affair lasted 3 days, nearly.
Why was it broken off?
Oh, I forget. At least it doesn't matter anymore. By the way, have you tried her with money? She used to be confoundedly fond of money.
No, I offered her any sum she wanted, and she refused.
Oh, then the marvellous gospel of gold breaks down sometimes. The rich cannot do everything after all, it would seem.
I suppose you're right. Arthur, I feel that disgrace is in store for me. I feel certain of it. I never knew what terror was before, but I know it now. It is as if a hand of ice were laid upon one's heart. It is as if one's heart were beating itself to death in some empty hollow.
Robert, you must fight her, you must fight her.
But how?
I can't tell you how at the present. I haven't got the smallest idea. But every man has a weak point. There is a flaw in each and every one of us. My father tells me even I have faults. Perhaps I have. I don't know.
In defending myself against Mrs Cheveley, I have the right to use any weapon that I can find, have I not?
I don't think you should have the smallest scruple in doing so. She is thoroughly capable of taking care of herself.
Then I shall write a cipher telegram to the embassy at Vienna, and inquire if there is anything known against her. There may be some secret scandal that she might be afraid of.
Yes, well, I think she's one of those very modern women who find a new scandal as becoming as a new bonnet and air them out in the park at every afternoon at 5:30. I'm sure she adores scandals, and the pleasant story of her life is she can't manage to have enough of them.
What makes you say that?
Well, she did wear far too much rouge last night, and not quite enough clothes. That's always the sign of despair in a woman.
But it is worth my writing to Vienna in any case, is it not?
Well, it's always worthwhile asking a question, though it is not always worthwhile answering one.
Mason, is Mr. Trafford in his room?
Yes, Sir Robert.
Have him send this off in cipher at once. There must not be a moment's delay.
Yes, Sir Robert.
I'll give that back again a minute. She must have had some curious hold over Baron Arnheim. I wonder what it was.
I wonder.
I will fight her to the death, Arthur. As long as my wife knows nothing.
Oh, fight him in any case, in any case.
If she were to find out, there would be little left to fight for. As soon as I hear from Vienna, I shall let you know the result. It is a chance. Just a chance, but I feel certain of it. And as I fought my century with its weapons, I shall fight her with her weapons. It is only fair, and she looks like a woman with a past, doesn't she?
Well, most pretty women do. But there is a fashion in past, just as there is a fashion in frocks. Perhaps Mrs. Cheveley's past is only a slightly décolleté one. They are excessively popular nowadays. Besides, I shouldn't build too many hopes on frightening Mrs. Cheveley. I don't think she's a woman so easily frightened. She has survived all her creditors, and she shows a wonderful presence of mind.
I live on hopes now, Arthur. I clutch at every chance. I feel like a man on a ship that is sinking. The water is around my feet, and the very air is bitter with storm.
How do you, Mason? I can let myself in.
Hush! I hear my wife's voice.
Good afternoon, Lord Goring.
Good afternoon, Lady Chiltern. Have you been to the park?
No, I've just come from the Women's Liberal Association, where, by the way, Robert, your name is received with loud applause. And now I've come in to have my tea. You will wait and have some tea, won't you?
Oh, I'll wait for a short time, thanks.
I'll be back in a moment. And then they're going to take my hat off.
Oh, no, please don't. It's such a pretty hat. One of the prettiest hats I ever saw. I'm sure the Women's Liberal Association received it with a loud applause.
We have much more important work to do than look at each other's bonnets, Lord Goring.
Really? What sort of work?
Oh, dull, useful, delightful things, factory acts, female inspectors, the 8 Hours Bill, the parliamentary franchise. Everything, in fact, that you would find thoroughly uninteresting.
And never bonnets?
Never bonnets, never.
You have been a good friend to me, Arthur. A thoroughly good friend.
I haven't been able to do too much for you yet, as of yet, Robert. In fact, I haven't been able to do anything, as far as I can tell. I'm thoroughly disappointed in myself.
No, you have enabled me to tell the truth. That is something. The truth has always stifled me.
I get rid of the truth as soon as possible. Bad habit, by the way. It makes one so unpopular at the club, the older members at least. They call it being conceited. Perhaps it is.
I would to God that I had been able to tell the truth. To live the truth. That is the great thing in life, is it not? To live the truth. And I shall see you soon again, Arthur, shan't I?
Of course, whenever you like. I'm looking to the bachelor's ball tonight, unless I can find something better to do. But I shall come around tomorrow. Should you need me tonight, send a note around to Curzon Street.
Thank you.
You're not going, Robert?
have letters to write, dear.
You work too hard, Robert. You seem never to think of yourself. And you're looking so tired.
It is nothing, dear. Nothing.
Do sit down. I'm so glad you've called. I want to talk to you about, well, not about bonnets or the Women's Liberal Association. You take far too much interest in the first subject and not nearly enough in the second.
You wish to speak to me about Mrs. Cheveley?
Yes, you've guessed it. After you left last night, I found out that what she had said was really true. Of course, I made Robert write her a letter at once, withdrawing his promise.
Yes, so he gave me to understand.
To have kept it would have been the first stain on a career that has been stainless always. Robert must be above reproach. He's not like other men. He cannot afford to do what other men do. Don't you agree with me, Lord Goring? You're Robert's greatest friend. You're our greatest friend. No one except myself knows Robert better than you do. He has no secrets from me, and I don't think he has any from you.
Oh, he doesn't have any secrets from me. At least, I don't think so.
Then am I not right in my estimate of him? I know I am right, but speak to me frankly.
Quite frankly?
Surely you have nothing to conceal, have you?
Oh, nothing. But my dear Lady Chiltern, I think, if you'll allow me to say so, that in practical life...
Of which you know so little, Lord Goring.
Of which I know nothing by experience. But I do know something by observation. I think in practical life there is something about success, actual success, that is a little unscrupulous. And something about ambition, unscrupulous always. Once a man has set his heart and soul to reach to a certain point, if he has to climb the crag, he climbs the crag. If he has to walk the mile,
Well?
he walks the mile. I am only speaking generally about life.
I hope so. Why do you look at me so strangely, Lord Goring?
Lady Chiltern, I've often thought perhaps you were a little too hard in your views in life. I think sometimes you don't give certain sufficient allowances. In every nature there are elements of weakness or worse than weakness. Supposing, for example, any public figure, Lord Merton, my father, or Robert, say, had written a letter to someone many years ago, very foolishly.
What do you mean, a foolish letter?
Oh, I mean a letter severely compromising one's position. I am only painting an imaginary case here.
Robert is as incapable of doing a foolish thing as he is of doing a wrong thing.
Nobody is incapable of doing a foolish thing. Nobody is incapable of doing a wrong thing.
Are you a pessimist, Lord Goring? What will the other dandies say? They will all have to go into mourning.
No, Lady Chiltern, I am not a pessimist. Indeed, I'm not quite sure I know what pessimism truly means. But I do know that life cannot be understood without much charity. It cannot be lived without much charity. It is love, and not the German philosophy, that is the explanation of this world, whatever may be the explanation of the next. And if you ever are in any trouble, Lady Chiltern, trust me absolutely, and I will help you in whatever way I can. Should you ever want me, come to me for my assistance, and you shall have it. Come at once to me.
Lord Goring, you are talking quite seriously. I don't think I ever heard you talk seriously before.
Forgive me, Lady Chiltern, it won't happen again. If I can help it.
But I like you to be serious.
Dear Gertrude, pray don't say such a dreadful thing to Lord Goring. Seriousness would be very unbecoming to him. Good afternoon, Lord Goring. Pray be as trivial as you can.
Oh, I should like to, Miss Mabel, but I'm afraid I'm a little out of practice this morning. Besides, I have to be going now.
But just when I have come in, what dreadful manners you have. I'm sure you were very badly brought up.
Oh, I was.
I wish I had brought you up.
I'm so sorry you didn't.
It's too late now, I suppose.
Oh, I'm not so sure.
for a ride tomorrow morning?
Oh, yes, of course.
Well,
10 o'clock?
Yes, don't forget.
Of course I shan't. By the way, Lady Chiltern, there are no news of your guest from last evening. It has been crowded out by the Lambeth Conference or the County Council or something equally boring. Do you mind if I have a list? I have a particular reason for asking you.
I'm sure Mr. Trafford will be able to give you one.
Thanks so much.
Tommy Trafford is the most useful person in London.
And who is the most ornamental?
I am.
How clever of you to have guessed it. Goodbye, Lady Chiltern. You will remember what I said to you, won't you?
Yes, but I don't know why you said it to me.
I hardly know myself. Goodbye, Miss Mabel.
Oh, I wish you weren't going. I have had 4 wonderful adventures this morning. 4.5, in fact. You might stop and listen to some of them.
How very selfish of you to have 4.5. There won't be any left for me.
Well, I don't want you to have any. They would not be good for you.
That is the first unkind thing you have ever said to me. How charmingly you said it. 10 tomorrow.
Sharp.
Quite sharp. But, don't bring Mr. Trafford with you.
Oh, of course I shan't bring Tommy Trafford. Tommy Trafford's in great disgrace.
Oh, I'm delighted to hear it.
Gertrude, I wish you would speak to Tommy Trafford.
What has poor Mr. Trafford done this time? Robert says he's the best secretary he's ever had.
Well, Tommy has proposed to me again. Tommy really does nothing but propose to me. He proposed to me last night in the music room when I was quite unprotected, as there was an elaborate trio going on. But I didn't dare to make the smallest repartee. I need hardly tell you. I mean, if I had, the music would have stopped at once. Musical people are so absurdly unreasonable. They are always wanting one to be perfectly dumb at the very moment one is longing to be absolutely deaf. Then he proposed to me this morning, in broad daylight, in front of that dreadful statue of Achilles. Honestly, the things that go on in front of that work of art are quite appalling. The police should interfere. At luncheon, I saw by the glare in his eye that he was going to propose again. And I just managed to check him in time by assuring him that I am a bimetallist. Fortunately, I don't know what bimetallism means. And I don't believe anybody else does either. But the observation crushed Tommy for some 10 minutes. Well, then Tommy is so annoying in the way that he proposes. If he proposed at the top of his voice, I shouldn't mind so much. That might produce some effect on the public. But when Tommy wants to be romantic, he talks to one just like a doctor. I'm very fond of Tommy, but his methods of proposing are quite out of date. I wish, Gertrude, you would speak to him and tell him that once a week is quite often enough to propose to anyone, and that it should always be done in a manner that attracts some attention.
Dear Mabel, don't talk like that. Besides, Robert thinks very highly of Mr. Trafford. He believes he has a brilliant future before him.
Ugh, I wouldn't marry a man with a future ahead of him for anything under the sun.
Mabel.
I know, dear. You married a man with a future, didn't you? But then Robert was a genius, and you have a noble, self-sacrificing character. Well, you can stand geniuses. I have no character at all, and Robert is the only genius that I could ever bear. I mean, geniuses are so annoying, aren't they? I mean, they talk so much, such a bad habit. And they're always thinking about themselves, and I want them to be thinking about me. Oh, I must go round now and rehearse at Lady Basildone's. You remember we are doing tableau, don't you? The triumph of something. I don't know what. I hope to be the triumph of me. Only triumph I'm really interested in at present. Gertrude, do you know who's come to see you? That dreadful Mrs. Cheveley in the most lovely gown. Did you ask her?
Mrs. Cheveley? Coming to see me?
Yes.
Impossible.
I assure you, she is coming upstairs as large as life and not nearly so natural.
You need not wait, Mabel. Remember, Lady Basildon is expecting you.
Oh, no, but I must shake hands with Lady Markby. She's delightful. I love being scolded by her.
Lady Markby, Mrs. Cheveley.
Dear Lady Markby, how nice of you to come and see me. Won't you sit down, Mrs. Cheveley?
Thanks. Isn't that Miss Chiltern? I should like so much to know her.
Mabel, Mrs. Cheveley wishes to know you.
I thought your frock so charming last night. So simple and suitable.
Oh, really? I must tell my dressmaker. It'll be such a surprise to her. Goodbye, Lady Markby.
Going already?
Oh, I'm so sorry, but I'm obliged to. I'm just off to rehearsal. I've got to stand on my head in some tableau.
On your head, child? Oh, I hope not. I believe it is most unhealthy.
But it is for an excellent charity, in aid of the undeserving. The only people I'm really interested in. Tommy Trafford is treasurer, and I am secretary.
And what is Lord Goring?
Lord Goring is president.
Well, both should suit him admirably, unless he's deteriorated since I knew him first.
You are remarkably modern, Mabel. A little too modern, perhaps? Nothing is so dangerous as being too modern. One is apt to grow old-fashioned quite suddenly. I have known many instances of it.
Oh, what a dreadful prospect.
Oh, my dear, you need not be nervous. You will always be as pretty as possible. That is the best fashion there is, and the only fashion that England succeeds in setting.
Thank you so much, Lady Markby, for England and myself.
Dear Gertrude, we're just called to know if Mrs. Cheveley's diamond brooch has been found. Here?
Yes, I missed it when I got back to Claridge's. I thought I might have possibly dropped it here.
I have heard nothing about it, but I will send for the butler and ask.
Pray don't trouble, Lady Chiltern. I dare say I lost it at the opera before we came on here.
Oh, yes, I suppose it must have been at the opera. The fact is, we all scramble and jostle about so much nowadays that I wonder we have anything at all left on us at the end of an evening. I know myself that when I'm coming back from the drawing room, I always feel as if I hadn't a shred on me. Oh, except a small shred of decent reputation, just enough to prevent the lower classes from making painful observations through the windows of the carriage. The fact is, our society is terribly overpopulated. Really, someone should arrange a proper scheme of assisted emigration. It would do a great deal of good.
I quite agree with you, Lady Markby. It has been nearly 6 years since I've been in London for the season, and I must say, society has become dreadfully mixed. One sees the oddest people everywhere.
Yes, they do, dear, but one needn't know them. I'm sure I don't know half the people that come to my house, and indeed, from all I hear, I shouldn't like to.
What sort of a brooch was it that you lost, Mrs. Cheveley?
A diamond snake brooch with a ruby, a rather large ruby.
I thought you said there was a sapphire on the head, dear.
No, Lady Markby, a ruby.
Oh, and very becoming, I'm quite sure.
Has a diamond and ruby brooch been found in any of the rooms this morning, Mason?
No, my lady.
It really is of no consequence, Lady Chiltern. I'm sorry to have put you to any inconvenience.
Oh, it has been no inconvenience. That will do, Mason. You can bring tea.
Well, I must say, it is most annoying to lose anything. I remember once at Bath, years ago, losing in the pump room an exceedingly handsome cameo bracelet that Sir John had given me. I don't think he has given me anything since, I am sorry to say. He has sadly degenerated. Really, this horrid House of Commons quite ruins our husbands for us. I think the lower house by far the greatest blow to a happy married life that there has been since that terrible thing called the higher education of women was invented.
It is heresy to say that in this house, Lady Markby. Robert is a great champion of the higher education of women, and so I'm afraid am I.
Higher education of man is what I would like to see, and needed so sadly.
Oh, they do, dear, but I'm afraid such a scheme would be quite unpractical. I don't think man has much capacity for development. He has got as far as he can, and that is not very far, is it? With regards to women, well, dear Gertrude, you belong to the younger generation, and I'm sure it is all right if you approve of it. In my time, of course, we were taught not to understand anything. That was the old system, and wonderfully interesting it was too. I assure you, the amount of things that I and my poor dear sister were taught not to understand was quite extraordinary. But modern women understand everything, I am told.
Except their husbands. That is one thing modern women never understand.
And a very good thing too, dear, I dare say. It might break up many a happy home if they did. Oh, not yours, I need hardly say, Gertrude. You have married a pattern husband. I wish I could say as much for myself. But ever since Sir John is attending the debates regularly, which he never used to do in the good old days, his language has become quite impossible. He always seems to think he is addressing the House, and consequently, whenever he discusses the state of the agricultural labourer or the Welsh church or something quite improper of that kind, I am obliged to send the servants out of the room. It is not pleasant to see one's own butler, who has been with one for 23 years, actually blushing at the sideboard. And the footmen making contortions in corners like persons in circuses. Oh, I assure you, my life will be quite ruined unless they send John at once to the upper house. He won't take any interest in politics then, will he? The House of Lords is so sensible, an assembly of gentlemen. But in his present state, Sir John really is a great trial. Why, this morning, before breakfast was half over, he stood up on the hearthrug, put his hands in his pockets, and appealed to the country at the top of his voice. I left the table as soon as I had my second cup of tea, I need hardly say. But his violent language could be heard all over the house. I trust, Gertrude, that Sir Robert is not like that.
But I'm very much interested in politics, Lady Markby. I love to hear Robert talk about them.
Oh, well, I hope he is not as devoted to blue books as Sir John is. I don't think they can be quite improving reading for anyone.
I never read a blue book. I prefer books with yellow covers.
Oh, yellow is a gay colour, is it not? I used to wear yellow a good deal in my early days, and would do so now if Sir John were not so painfully personal in his observations. And a man on the question of dress is always ridiculous, is he not?
Oh, no, I think men are the only authorities on dress.
Really, dear? One wouldn't say so from the sort of hats they wear, would one?
May I offer you some tea, Mrs. Cheveley?
Thanks.
Some tea, Lady Markby?
No thanks, dear. The fact is, I promised to go round for 10 minutes to see poor Lady Brancaster, who is in very great trouble. Her daughter, quite a well-brought-up girl too, has actually become engaged to be married to a curate in Shropshire. It is very sad indeed. I can't understand this modern mania for curates. In my time, of course, we girls saw them running about the place like rabbits, but we never took any notice of them, I need hardly say. However, I am told nowadays that country society is quite honeycombed with them. Well, I think it is most irreligious. And then the eldest son has quarrelled with his father, and it is said that whenever they meet at the club, Lord Brancaster always hides himself behind the money article in the Times. However, I believe that is quite a common occurrence nowadays, and they actually have to take in extra copies of the Times in all the clubs in St. James Street. There are so many sons who won't have anything to do with their fathers, and so many fathers who won't speak to their sons. I think myself it is very much to be regretted.
Oh, so do I. Fathers have so much to learn from their sons nowadays.
Oh, really, dear? What?
The art of living, the only really fine art we have produced in modern times.
I'm afraid Lord Brancaster knew a good deal about that. More than his poor wife ever did. You know Lady Brancaster, don't you, dear?
Just slightly. She was staying at Langton last autumn when we were there.
Well, like all stout women, she looks the very picture of happiness, as no doubt you noticed. However, there are a great many tragedies in her family besides this affair of the curate. Her own sister, Mrs Jekyll, had a most unhappy life through no fault of her own, I am sorry to say. She ultimately was so broken-hearted that she went into a convent, or onto the operatic stage, I forget which. And no, it was decorative art needlework she took up. I knew she had lost all sense of pleasure in life. And now, dear, if you will allow me, I shall leave Mrs. Cheveley in your charge and call back for her in a quarter of an hour. Or perhaps, dear Mrs. Cheveley, you wouldn't mind waiting in the carriage while I'm with Lady Brancaster. As I intend it to be a visit of condolence, I shan't stay long.
I don't mind waiting in the carriage a bit, provided there is somebody to look at one.
Well, I hear the curate is always prowling about the house.
I'm afraid I'm not fond of girlfriends.
I do hope Mrs. Cheveley will stay here a little. I should like to have a few minutes' conversation with her.
How very kind of you, Lady Chiltern. Believe me, nothing would give me greater pleasure.
No doubt you have many pleasant reminiscences of your school days to talk over together. Goodbye, dear Gertrude. Shall I see you this evening at Lady Bonnard's? She has a wonderful new genius. He does nothing at all, I believe. That is a great comfort, is it not?
Robert and I are dining at home by ourselves tonight, and I don't think I shall go anywhere afterwards. Robert, of course, will have to be in the house, but there is nothing interesting on.
Dining at home by yourselves? Is that quite prudent? Ah, but I forget, your husband is the exception. Mine is the general rule. And nothing ages a woman so rapidly as having married the general rule.
Wonderful woman, Lady Martha, isn't she? Talks more and says less than anybody I've ever met. She's made to be a public speaker more than her husband. Although he's a typical Englishman, always dull and usually violent.
Mrs. Cheveley, I think it is right to tell you quite frankly that had I known who you really were, I should not have invited you to my house last night.
Really?
I could not have done so.
Then I see that after all these years you have not changed a bit, Gertrude.
I never change.
Then life has taught you nothing?
It has taught me that a person who has once been guilty of dishonest and dishonourable action may be guilty of it a second time and should be shunned.
Would you apply that rule to everyone?
Yes, to everyone without exception.
And I'm sorry for you, Gertrude. Very sorry for you.
You see now, I'm sure that for many reasons, any further acquaintance between us during your stay in London is quite impossible.
Do you know, Gertrude, I don't mind talking morality a bit. Morality is simply the attitude we adopt to those whom we personally dislike. You dislike me, I'm quite aware of that, and I've always detested you. And yet, I have come here to do you a service.
Like the service you wished to render my husband last night, I suppose. Thank heaven I saved him from that.
It was you who made him write that insolent letter to me? It was you who made him break his promise?
Yes.
Then you must make him keep it. I'll give you till tomorrow morning, no more. If by that time your husband does not solemnly bind himself to helping me in this scheme in which I am interested...
This fraudulent speculation.
Call it what you choose. I hold your husband in the hollow of my hand, and if you are wise, you will make him do what I tell him.
You are impertinent. What has my husband to do with you, with a woman like you?
In this world, like means like. It is because your husband is himself fraudulent and dishonest that we pair so well together. Between you and him there are chasms. He and I are closer than friends. We are enemies. Linked together, the same sin binds us.
How dare you class my husband with yourself? How dare you threaten him or me? Leave my house, you are unfit to enter it.
Your house? A house bought with the price of dishonor? A house, everything in which has been paid for by fraud? Ask him what the origin of his fortune is. Get him to tell you how he sold to a stockbroker a cabinet secret. Learn from him to what you owe your position.
It is not true. Robert? It is not true.
Look at him. Can he deny it? Does he dare to?
Go at once. You have done your worst now.
My worst? I'm not done with you. With either of you. I give you both till tomorrow at noon. If by that time you do not do what I bid you to do, the whole world shall know the origin of Robert Chiltern.
Listen! Show Mrs. Cheveley out.
You sold the cabinet secret for money. You began your life with fraud. You built up your career on dishonor. Tell me it is not true. Lie to me, tell me it is not true.
this woman said is quite true. Gertrude, listen to me. You don't realize how I was tempted. Let me tell you the whole thing.
No, don't come near me. Don't touch me. I feel as if you had soiled me forever. What a mask you have been wearing all these years. A horrible, painted mask. You sold yourself for money? A common thief were better. You put yourself up to sale to the highest bidder. You were bought in the market. You lied to the whole world, and yet you will not lie to me. No, don't speak. Say nothing. Your voice wakes terrible memories. Memories of things that made me love you. Memories of words that made me love you. Memories that are now horrible to me. Oh, I worshipped you. You were to me something apart from common life. Something pure, noble, honest and without stain. The world seemed to me finer because you were in it. And goodness more real because you lived. And now, when I think that I made of a man like you my ideal, the ideal of my life.
There was your mistake. There was your error. The error all women commit. Why can't you women love us faults at all? Why must you place us on monstrous pedestals? We have all feet of clay, women as well as men. But when we men love women, we love them knowing their weaknesses, their follies, their imperfections. Love them all the more, it may be, for that reason. It is not the perfect, but the imperfect who have need of love. It is when we are wounded by our own hands or by the hands of others that love should come to cure us. Else what use is love at all? All sins except the sin against itself, love should forgive. All lives save loveless lives, true love should pardon. A man's love is like that. It is wider, it is larger, it is more human than a woman's. You women think you are making ideals of men. What you are making of us is false idols merely. You made your idol of me. And I had not the courage to come there. To show you my wounds. To tell you my weaknesses. I was afraid that I would lose your love. As I have lost it now. And so last night you ruined my life for me. Yes, ruined it. What this woman threatened me with was nothing compared to what she offered me. She offered me peace, stability, security. The one sin of my youth that I had thought was dead rose up against me. Hideous, horrible. With its hands at my throat, I could have killed it. Sent it back into its grave, destroyed its record, burned the one witness against me. You prevented me. No one but you, and you know it. And now what is there left for me? But public disgrace, ruin, terrible shame, the mockery of the world, a lonely, dishonored life. A lonely, dishonored death, it may be one day. Let women make no more ideals of men. Let them not put them on their altars and bow before them, or they may ruin other lives as completely as you. You whom I have so wildly loved have ruined mine.
buttonhole for me, Phibbs?
Yes, my lord.
'Tis a rather distinguished thing, Phibbs. I am the only man of the smallest importance in London at present who wears a buttonhole.
Yes, my lord. I have observed that.
Well, you see, Phibbs, fashion is what one wears oneself. What is unfashionable is what other people wear.
Yes, my lord.
Just as vulgarity is the conduct of other people.
Yes, my lord.
And falsehoods, the truth of other people.
Yes, my lord.
Other people are quite dreadful. The only possible society is oneself.
Yes, my lord.
To love oneself, Phibbs, is the beginning of a lifelong romance.
Yes, my lord.
Don't think I like this buttonhole. Makes me a little too old. Makes me in the prime of my life, eh, Phibbs?
I don't observe any alteration in your lordship's appearance.
You don't, Phibbs?
No, my lord.
I'm not quite sure. For the future, a more trivial buttonhole in future on Thursday evenings.
I will speak to the florist, my lord. She has had a loss in her family recently, which perhaps accounts for the lack of triviality your lordship complains of in the buttonhole.
Ah, that is an extraordinary thing about the lower classes in England. They're always losing their relations.
Yes, my lord. They are extremely fortunate in that respect.
Any letters for me, Phibbs?
3, my lord.
I want a cab around in 20 minutes. Oh, Phibbs, when did this letter arrive?
It was brought by hand, just after your lordship went to the club.
Oh, that'll do, Phibbs. Lady Chiltern's pink notepaper. And Lady Chiltern's handwriting. That is rather strange. I thought Robert was to write. Well, let's see what Lady Chiltern has to say to me. I want you, I trust you, I'm coming to you. I want you, I trust you, I'm coming to you. And she's found out everything. Poor woman, poor woman. But what an hour to call. 10 o'clock? She'll have to pass of going to the Berkshires. Still, it's always nice to be expected and not to arrive. I'm not expected at the bachelor's ball, so therefore I shall certainly go. No, I will make her stand by her man. That is the only thing for that woman to do. It is the only thing for any lady to do. It is the growth of the moral sense that makes marriage such a hopeless, one-sided institution. 10 o'clock. Oh, she shall be here any minute. I must tell Phibbs I'm not in for anyone else.
Lord Caversham's here to see you, sir.
Oh, why will parents always come when they're least wanted? Some terrible mistake of nature, I suppose. I'm delighted to see you, my dear father.
Take my cloak off.
Oh, is it worthwhile, father?
Of course it is worthwhile, sir. Which is the most comfortable chair?
Oh, that one, father. It is the one I use myself, when I have visitors.
Thank you. No draughts, I hope, in this room?
No, father.
Glad to hear it. Can't stand draughts. No draughts at home.
A good many breezes, father.
Eh? Don't understand what you mean, sir. Want to have a serious conversation with you.
My dear father, at this hour?
Well, sir, it is only 10 o'clock. What is your objection to the hour? I think the hour is an admirable hour.
Well, the fact is, my dear father, this is not my day for talking seriously. I'm very sorry, it's not my day.
What do you mean, sir?
I mean that I only speak seriously on the first Tuesday of every month between 4 to 7.
Well, make it Tuesday then, make it Tuesday.
But it is after 7, father. And my doctor says I shouldn't speak seriously, else I'd talk in my sleep.
Talk in your sleep, sir. What does that matter? You are not married.
No, father, I am not.
That is what I've come to talk to you about, sir. You have got to get married, and at once. Why, when I was your age, I had been an inconsolable widower for 3 months. I was already paying my addresses to your admirable mother. Damn, sir, it is your duty to get married. You can't always be living for pleasure. Every man of position is married nowadays. Bachelors are not fashionable anymore. They are a damaged lot. Too much is known about them. You have got to get a wife, sir. Look where your friend Robert Chiltern has got to by probity, hard work, and a sensible marriage with a good woman. Why don't you imitate him, sir? Why don't you take him for your model?
Perhaps I shall, Father.
I wish you would, and I should be happy. At present, I make your mother's life miserable on your account. You are heartless.
I hope not, Father.
And it is high time for you to get married. You're 34 years of age, sir.
Yes, but only mid-32, 31 and a half when I have a very good buttonhole. This buttonhole is not trivial enough.
I tell you, you are 34, sir. And there is a draft in your room besides, which makes your conduct worse. Why did you tell me there was no draft, sir? I feel a draft, sir. I feel it distinctly.
Oh, so do I, Father. It is a terrible draft. I'll come see you tomorrow, Father. We can talk about anything you like. Let me help you on with your cloak, Father.
No, sir. I have called this evening for a definite purpose, and I'm going to see it through at all costs, to my health or yours.
Father.
Put down my cloak, sir.
Certainly. But let us go into another room. There is a terrible draught here. Bibbs? Bibbs, is there a very good fire in the smoke room?
Yes, my lord.
Come inside there, Father. Your sneezes are quite heartrending.
Well, I suppose I have a right to sneeze when I choose.
Of course, Father. I was merely expressing sympathy.
Damn sympathy. There is a great deal too much of that sort of thing going on nowadays.
Quite agree, Father. If there was less sympathy in the world, there would be less trouble in the world, wouldn't there?
That is a paradox, sir. I hate paradoxes.
Oh, so do I, Father. Everyone one meets is a paradox nowadays, and it makes society so obvious.
Do you always really understand what you say, sir?
Yes, Father, if I listen attentively.
If you listen attentively, conceive young puppy.
Bibbs, there is a woman coming to see me here on particular business. When she arrives, show her into the drawing room. Do you understand?
Yes, my lord.
It is the matter of gravest importance, Bibbs.
I understand, my lord.
Under no circumstances are anyone else to be admitted into the house.
I understand, my lord.
Thank you. Oh, that'll probably be the lady. I shall see to it myself.
Well, sir, am I to wait attendance on you?
In a moment, Father. Do excuse me. Well, Bibbs, you remember my instruction. Into the drawing room.
Yes, my lord.
What name, madam? Is Lord Goring not here? I was told he was at home.
His lordship is engaged at present with Lord Caversham, madam.
How very filial.
If you would be so kind, madam, as to come with me into the next room, Lord Goring will see you there.
Lord Goring expects me?
Yes, madame.
Are you quite sure?
His lordship told me that if a young lady called, I was to show her into the drawing room. His directions on the subject were very precise.
How thoughtful of him. To expect the unexpected shows a thoroughly modern intellect. Oh, how dreary a bachelor's drawing room always looks. I shall have to alter it. No, I don't care for that lamp. It is far too glaring. Light some candles.
Yes, madame.
I hope the candles have more becoming shades.
We have had no complaints about them, madam, as yet.
What woman he was waiting for tonight. It should be delightful to catch him. Men always look so silly when they're being caught. They're always being caught. What a very interesting room. What a very interesting picture. I wonder what his correspondence are like. bills and cards and debts and dollars. And who on earth writes to him on pink paper? Silly to write on pink paper. It looks like the beginning of a middle-class romance. Romance should never begin with sentiment. It should begin with science and end with a sentiment. I know that handwriting. That is Gertrude Chiltern's. I remember it perfectly. The 10 Commandments in every stroke of the pen and the moral law all over the page. Gertrude is writing to you about something horrid about me, I suppose. How I detest that woman! I trust you, I want you, I'm coming to you. Gertrude. I trust you, I want you, I'm coming to you. Gertrude.
The candles in the drawing room are lit, madam, as you directed.
Thank you.
I trust the shades are to your liking, madam. They're the most becoming that we have. They're the same as his lordship uses himself when he is dressing for dinner.
Then I'm sure they'll be perfectly right.
Thank you, madame.
My dear father, time to get married. Shall you permit me the time, the place, and the person, particularly the person?
That is a matter for me, sir. You would probably make a very poor choice. It is I who should be consulted, not you. There is property at stake. It is not a matter for affection. Affection comes later on in married life.
Yes. Affection comes when two people thoroughly dislike each other, father, doesn't it?
Certainly, sir. I mean to say, certainly not, sir. You are talking very foolishly tonight. What I say is that marriage is a matter for common sense.
Yes, but women with common sense are so curiously plain, father, aren't they? Of course, I only speak from hearsay.
No woman, plain or pretty, has any common sense at all, sir. Common sense is the privilege of our sex.
Quite so. And we men are so self-sacrificing, father, we never use it, do we?
I use it, sir. I use nothing else.
So my mother tells me.
It is the secret of your mother's happiness, sir. You are heartless, very heartless.
I hope not, father.
My dear Arthur, what a piece of good luck meeting you on the doorstep. Your servant just told me you were not at home. How extraordinary.
Well, the fact is, my dear Robert, I'm terribly busy tonight, and I told my servant I wasn't in for anyone. Even my father had a comparatively cold reception. He complained of a draft the whole time.
You must be at home to me, Arthur. You are my best friend. Perhaps after tonight you will be my only friend. My wife has discovered everything.
Oh, I guessed as much.
Really? How?
Oh, merely by some expression of your face as you came in. Who told her?
Mrs Cheveley herself. And now the woman that I love knows that I began my career with an act of low dishonesty, that I built my life upon sands of shame, that I sold like a common huckster the secret that had been entrusted to me as a man of honour. I thank heaven poor Lord Radley died before knowing I had betrayed him. I would to God that I had died before I had been so horribly tempted, or had fallen so low.
Have you heard nothing in answer to your wire from Vienna?
Yes, I received a telegram from the first secretary at 8 o'clock tonight.
Well?
Nothing is absolutely known against her. On the contrary, she occupies a rather high position in society. It is a sort of open secret that she received from Baron Arnheim the greater portion of his immense fortune. Beyond that, I can learn nothing.
So she doesn't turn out to be a spy, then?
Oh, spies are of no use nowadays. Their profession is over. The newspapers do their work instead.
And thunderingly well they do it.
Oh, may I ring for something? I'm parched with thirst. Some hock and seltzer, perhaps.
Oh, of course, permit me.
Thank you. Thanks. Oh, I don't know what to do, Arthur, and you are my only friend. But what a friend you are, the one friend I can trust. I can trust you absolutely, can't I?
My dear Robert, of course. Oh, Phibbs?
Yes, my lord.
Could you bring some hock and seltzer?
Yes, my lord.
Oh, and Phibbs? Would you excuse me, Robert? I want to give some direction to my servant.
Certainly.
When that lady calls, tell her I'm not at home. Tell her I'm suddenly caught out of town. Do you understand?
But, my lord, the lady is in that room, my lord. You told me to show her into that room, my lord.
You did perfectly right. Oh, what a mess I'm in. No, I shall get through it. I shall give her a lecture through the door. Awkward thing to manage, though.
Arthur, tell me what I should do. My life seems to have crumbled about me. I feel as if I am a ship without a rudder in a night without a star.
Robert, you love your wife, don't you, Robert?
I love her more than anything else in the world. I used to think ambition the great thing, but it is not. Love is the great thing. There is only love, and I love her. Oh, but I am defamed in her eyes. I am ignoble in her eyes. She has found me out, Arthur. She has found me out.
Has she not done some indiscretion, some folly in her past she couldn't forgive you for your sin?
My wife? Never. She does not know what sin or temptation is. I am of clay like other men. She stands apart as good women do, pitiless in her perfection, cold and stern and without mercy. I love her, Arthur. And yet she has cut my heart in two. Oh, don't let us talk of it. I was brutal to her this evening, but I suppose when sinners talk to saints, they are brutal always. I said to her things that were hideously true. From my side, from my standpoint, from the standpoint of men. Oh, don't let us talk of it.
Your wife will forgive you, Robert. Perhaps she's forgiving you now.
God,
she loves you, and why shouldn't she forgive you?
God grant it, Arthur. But there is one more thing I have to tell you. I have made up my mind what I'm going to do in the house.
Hock and seltzer, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, is your carriage here, Robert?
Oh, no, I walked from the club.
Robert will be taking my carriage, Phibbs.
Yes, my lord.
Robert, you don't mind me sending you away?
Oh, Arthur, you must let me stay for 5 minutes. Listen, I have made up my mind what I'm going to do in the house tonight. The debate on the Argentine Canal is to begin at 11. What was that?
Nothing?
I just heard a chair fall in the next room. Someone has been listening.
There's no one there.
There is someone there. The light's on in the room and the door is ajar. For God's sake, Arthur. Someone has been eavesdropping on my life's secrets. What does this mean?
Robert, you are excited, unnerved. I tell you, there is no one there in that room. Sit down, Robert.
Do you give me your word that there is no one there?
Yes.
Your word of honor?
Yes.
Arthur, let me see for myself.
No.
You have told me that there is no one there, so why can I not go into that room? You must let me go into that room and know that no eavesdropper has heard my life's secret. Arthur, you don't realize what I am going through.
Robert, this must stop. I have told you there is no one there in that room. That is enough.
It is not enough. I insist on going into this room. You have told me that there is no one there, so what reason can you have for refusing me?
Oh, for God's sake, there is someone there in that room. Someone you must not see.
I thought so.
I forbid you to enter that room.
I insist on going in. Stand back. My life is at stake. And I don't care who is there. I will know who it is to whom I have told my secret and my shame.
Good heavens. His own wife.
What explanation give me for the presence of that woman.
Oh, Robert, that woman there is stainless and guiltless of all offences toward you.
She is a vile and infamous thing!
Oh, don't say that, Robert. It was for your sake she came here. It was to try and save you she came here. She loves you, you and no one else.
You are mad! What am I to do with her intrigues with you? Let her remain your mistress. You are well suited to each other. Her, corrupt and shameful, and you, false as a friend, treacherous as an enemy even.
It's not true, Robert. I tell you, it is not true. In her presence and in yours, I will explain all.
Let me pass, sir. You have lied enough upon your word of honour.
Good evening, Lord Goring.
Mrs. Cheveley, good heavens. May I ask what you're doing in my drawing room?
Merely listening. I have a perfect passion for listening through keyholes. One always hears such wonderful things through them.
Doesn't that sound a lot like tempting Providence?
Oh, surely Providence can resist temptation by this time?
I'm glad you've called. I want to give you some good advice.
Oh, pray don't. Won't you never give a woman anything she can't wear in the evening?
I see you as willful as you used to be.
Far more. I've greatly improved. I've had much more experience.
Too much experience is a dangerous thing. Pray, have a cigarette. Half the pretty women in London smoke cigarettes. Personally, I prefer the other half.
Thanks. I don't smoke. My dressmaker wouldn't like it. And a woman's first duty is to her dressmaker, is it not? What her second duty is, no one has yet discovered.
You wish to sell me Robert Chiltern's letter, don't you?
To offer it to you on conditions? How did you guess that?
Because you haven't mentioned the subject. Have you got it with you?
Oh no, a well-made dress doesn't have any pockets.
What is your price for it?
How absurdly English you are. The English think a checkbook can solve every problem in life. Why, my dear Arthur, I have far much more money than you have, and quite as much as Robert Chiltern has got hold of. Money is not what I want.
What do you want, Mrs. Cheveley?
Why don't you call me Laura?
I don't like that name.
You used to adore it.
Yes, that's why.
Arthur, you loved me once,
Yes.
and you asked me to be your wife.
Well, that was the natural result of my loving you.
You threw me over because you saw, or said you saw, poor old Lord Mortlake trying to have a violent flirtation with me at the conservatory at Tenby.
Yeah, see, I'm under the impression that my lawyer settled that matter with you on certain terms, dictated by yourself.
At that time I was poor, you were rich.
Yes, that is why you pretended to love me.
Poor old Lord Mortlake. We only ever had two topics of conversation, his gout and his wife. I could never quite make out which of the two he was talking about. He used the most horrible language about them both. I'm silly, Arthur. Lord Mortlake was never anything more to me than an amusement. An utterly tedious amusement one finds at an English country house on an English country Sunday. I don't think anyone morally responsible for what he or she does at any English country house.
Yes, I know a lot of people think that.
I loved you, Arthur.
My dear Mrs. Cheveley, you have always been far too clever to know anything about real love.
I did love you. You loved me. Love is a wonderful thing, I suppose. When a man has once loved a woman, he'll do anything for her. Except to continue to love her.
Yes, except that.
I'm tired of living abroad. I want to move back to London. I want to have a charming house. I want to have a salon. If one could only teach the English how to talk and the Irish how to listen, society would be quite civilized.
Besides, I have arrived at the romantic stage. When I saw you last night at the Chilterns, I knew you were the only person I ever cared for. If I ever cared for anybody, Arthur. And so, on the morning of the day you marry me, I'll give you Robert Chiltern's letter. I'll give it to you now if you promise to marry me.
Now?
Tomorrow.
Are you serious?
Yes, quite serious.
I should make you a very bad husband.
I don't mind bad husbands, I've had two. They amuse me immensely.
Ah, you mean you amuse yourself immensely, I suppose?
What do you know about my married life?
Oh, nothing. But I can read it, like a book.
What book?
The Book of Numbers?
Do you think it is quite charming to be so rude to a woman in your own house?
Well, in the case of very fascinating women, Mrs. Cheveley, sex is a challenge, not a defense.
I suppose that's meant for a compliment. My dear Arthur, women are never disarmed by compliments. Men always are. That is the difference between the two sexes.
Women are never disarmed by anything as far as I can tell.
You are going to allow your greatest friend, Robert Chiltern, to be ruined rather than marry someone who really has considerable attractions left. I thought you would have risen to some great height of self-sacrifice, Arthur. I think you should. And the rest of your life you can spend contemplating your own perfections.
I do that as it is. And self-sacrifice is a thing that should be put down by law. It's so demoralizing for those one sacrifices oneself for. They always go to the bad.
As if anything could demoralize Robert Chiltern. You seem to forget I know his real character.
What you know of him is not his real character. It was an act of folly done in his youth. Dishonorable, I admit. Shameful, I admit. Unworthy of him, I admit. And therefore, not his real character.
You men stand up for one another.
And how you women war against each other.
I only war against one woman, against Gertrude Chiltern. I hate her! I hate her more now than ever!
Because you brought a real tragedy into her life, I suppose.
There's only one real tragedy in a woman's life. The fact that her past is her lover and her future invariably her husband.
Lady Chiltern knows nothing of the life to which you are alluding.
A woman whose size gloves is 7 3/4 never knows much about anything. You know Gertrude always wore 7 3/4. That was one of the reasons there was never any moral sympathy between us. Well, Arthur, I suppose this romantic interview may be regarded at its end. You admit it was romantic, don't you? For the privilege of being your wife, I was ready to surrender a great prize, the climax of my diplomatic career. You declined. Very well. If Sir Robert does not uphold my Argentine scheme, I'll expose him. Voilà, tout.
No. No, you mustn't do that. That would be vile, horrible, and infamous.
Don't use such big words. They mean so little. It is a commercial transaction, that is all. There's no good in mixing up sentimentality in it. I offered to sell Robert Chiltern a certain thing. If he won't pay me my price, he shall have to pay the world an even greater price. There is no more to be said. I must go. Goodbye. Won't you shake hands?
With you? No. Your transaction with Robert may pass as a loathsome commercial transaction of a loathsome commercial age. But you seem to forget that you came here tonight to talk of love. You, whose words desecrate the word love. You, to whom the thing is a book closely sealed, went this afternoon to the house of one of the most noble and gentle women, to degrade her husband in her eyes, to try and kill her love for him, to put poison in her heart and bitterness in her life, and it may be to spoil her own soul. That I cannot forgive you. That was horrible. For that there can be no forgiveness.
Arthur! You are unjust to me. You are quite unjust to me. I didn't go and taunt Gertrude. I had no idea of doing anything of the kind when I entered. I called with Lady Markby simply to ask whether an ornament, a jewel, that I had lost somewhere last night had been found at the Chilterns. If you don't believe me, ask Lady Markby. She will tell you it is true. The scene that occurred happened after Lady Markby left and was really forced on me by Gertrude's rudeness and sneers. I called a little out of malice, if you like, but really to ask whether a diamond brooch of mine had been found. That was the origin of the whole thing.
A diamond snake brooch with a ruby?
Yes. How did you know?
Because it is found. In point of fact, I found it. And stupidly forgot to tell the butler anything about it before I had gone. It is over here. Is this it?
Yes, I'm so glad to get it back. It was a present.
Oh. Won't you wear it?
Certainly, if you pin it in. Why do you put it on as a bracelet? I never knew it could be worn as a bracelet.
Oh, really?
No. But it looks very well on me as a bracelet, doesn't it?
Yes. Much better than when I last saw it.
When did you see it last?
Oh, about 10 years ago, on Mary Berkshire, from whom you stole it.
What do you mean?
I mean that you stole that ornament from my cousin Mary Berkshire, to whom I gave it as a wedding gift. Suspicion fell on a wretched servant who was sent away in disgrace. I recognized that ornament last night, and determined to say nothing about it until I could find the thief. And I have found the thief, and I have heard her own confession.
It is not true.
Why, it is true. Why, thieves written all over you.
My whole affair from beginning to end, I'd say I've never seen this wretched thing in my life. It was never in my possession.
Well, the drawback of stealing something, Mrs. Cheveley, is one never knows how wonderful that thing one steals is. You can't get the bracelet off unless you know where the spring is. And I see you don't know where the spring is. It's very difficult to find.
You brute! You coward!
Pray, don't use such big words. They mean so little.
What are you going to do?
Well, I'm going to call for my servant. He is an admirable servant. Always comes at the moment one rings for him. When he arrives, I'm going to ask him to fetch the police.
The police? What for?
Well, tomorrow the Berkshires will prosecute you. That's what the police are for.
Don't do that. I'll do anything you want. Anything you want.
Give me Robert Chiltern's letter.
Stop letting me have time to think.
Give me Robert Chiltern's letter.
I haven't got it with me. I'll give it to you tomorrow.
You're lying. You know you're lying. Give it to me at once.
No!
Is this it?
Yes.
For so well-dressed a woman, Mrs. Cheveley, you have moments of admirable common sense. I congratulate you.
Please, get me a glass of water.
Oh, certainly.
Thank you. Will you help me with my fur?
Oh, with pleasure.
Thank you. I'm never going to try to harm Robert Chiltern again.
Well, fortunately for you, you won't have the chance.
Well, Even if I had the chance, I wouldn't. On the contrary, I'm going to render him a great service.
I'm charmed to hear it. It is a reformation.
Yes, I can't bear so honourable an Englishman, so upright a gentleman, being so shamefully deceived and so...
Well?
It seems that Gertrude Chiltern's dying speech and confession has strayed into my pocket.
What do you mean?
I mean that I'm going to send Robert Chiltern the love letter his wife wrote to you tonight.
Love letter. Ooh.
I trust you. I want you. I'm coming to you. Gertrude.
Oh, you wretched woman. Must you always be thieving? Give me back that letter. I shall take it from you by force. You shall not leave this room until I get that letter.
Lord Goring merely rang that you should see me out. Good night, Lord Goring.
Damn. It's a great nuisance. I can't find anyone else in this house to talk to. And I'm full of interesting information. I feel like the latest edition of something or other. Oh.
Sir Robert has still not returned from the Foreign Office, my lord.
Is Lady Chiltern not down?
Her ladyship has not yet left her room, but Miss Chiltern has just returned from riding.
Ah, that is something.
Yes, and Lord Caversham has been waiting for some time in the library for Sir Robert. But I did tell him that you were here.
Oh, thank you. Would you mind telling him I've gone?
Yes, of course, sir.
Really, I don't want to see my father 3 days running. That's far too much excitement for any son. I hope to goodness he doesn't come up. Father's to be neither seen nor heard. That is the only proper basis of family life. Mothers are different. Mothers are darlings.
Well, sir, what are you doing here? Wasting your time as usual, I suppose?
My dear father, when one pays a visit, it is for the purpose of wasting other people's time, not one's own.
Have you been thinking over what I spoke to you about last night?
Oh, I've been thinking about nothing else, father.
Engaged to be married yet?
Well, not yet, but I intend to be by lunchtime.
You can have till dinner time if it would be of any convenience to you.
Thanks awfully. I'd sooner be engaged by lunchtime.
Never know when you're being serious or not.
Neither do I, father.
I suppose you've read the Times this morning?
The Times? Good heavens, no, I only read the Morning Post. Anything one needs to know about the real life is where the duchesses are. Anything else is quite demoralizing.
You mean to say that you have not read the Times' leading article on Robert Chiltern's career?
Good heavens, no. What does it say?
What should it say, sir? Everything complimentary, of course. Chiltern's speech on this Argentine canal scheme was one of the finest pieces of oratory ever delivered in the House since Canning.
Ah, never heard of Canning. Never wanted to. And, did Robert uphold the scheme?
Uphold it, sir? How little you know him. Why, he denounced it roundly, and the whole system of modern political finance. This speech is the turning point in his career. As the Times points out, you should read this article, sir. Sir Robert Chiltern, most rising of our young statesmen, brilliant orator, unblemished career, well-known integrity of character, represents what is best in English public life. Noble contrast to the lax moralities so common among foreign politicians. They will never say that of you, sir.
I certainly hope not, Father. But I am delighted about what you tell me about Robert. Thoroughly delighted. It shows he's got great pluck.
Ah, he's got more than pluck, sir. He's got genius.
I prefer pluck. It's not so common as genius is nowadays.
I wish you would go into Parliament.
My dear Father, only people who look dull ever get into the House of Commons, and only people who are dull ever succeed there.
Why don't you try and do something useful in life?
I'm far too young.
I hate this affectation of youth, sir. It is a great deal too prevalent nowadays.
Youth isn't an affectation, Father. Youth is an art.
Why don't you propose to that pretty Miss Chiltern?
I'm of a very nervous disposition, especially in the morning.
I don't suppose there's the slightest chance of her accepting you.
I don't know how the betting stands today.
If she did accept you, she would be the prettiest fool in England.
That is just what I should like to marry. A thoroughly sensible wife would reduce me to a state of utter idiocy in less than 6 months.
You don't deserve her, sir.
My dear Father, if we married the women we deserved, we should have a very bad time of it.
Oh. How do you do, Lord Caversham? I hope Lady Caversham is quite well.
Lady Caversham is as usual.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
And Lady Caversham's bonnets, are they at all better?
They have had a serious relapse, I'm sorry to say.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
I hope an operation will not be necessary.
If it is, we shall have to give Lady Caversham a narcotic. Otherwise, she would never consent to have a feather touched.
Good morning, Miss Mabel.
Oh, are you here? Of course, you understand after breaking your appointment this morning, I am never going to speak to you again.
Oh, no, please don't say that. You are the one person in London I'd like to have really listen to me.
But Goring, I never believe a single word that either you or I say to each other.
You are quite right, my dear, quite right. As far as he is concerned, I mean.
Do you think you could possibly convince your son to behave a little better occasionally, just as a change?
I regret to say, Miss Chiltern, that I have no influence at all over my son. I wish I had. If I had, I knew what I would make him do.
Yes, I'm afraid he has one of those terribly weak natures that is not susceptible to influence.
He is heartless, very heartless.
Seems to me I'm a little in the way here.
It is very good for you to be in the way and to know what people say of you behind your back.
I don't like thinking about what other people say behind my back. Makes me far too conceited.
After that, my dear, I really must bid you good morning.
Oh, I hope you're not going to leave me here all alone with Lord Goring, especially at such an early hour in the day.
I'm afraid I can't take him with me to Downing Street. It is not the Prime Minister's day for seeing the unemployed.
People who do not keep their appointments in the park are horrid.
Detestable.
Oh, I'm glad you admit it. But I wish you wouldn't look so pleased about it.
I can't help it. I'm always pleased when I'm around you.
Oh, then I suppose it's my duty to remain with you?
Of course it is.
Well, my duty is a thing I never do. On principle, it always depresses me. So I'm afraid I must leave you.
No, please don't go. I have a very particular thing to say to you.
Oh, is it a proposal?
Yes. Yes, I'm bound to say it is.
I'm so glad. That makes the second today.
The second today? What conceited ass has been impertinent enough to propose to you before I had proposed to you?
Oh, well, Tommy Trafford, of course. It is one of Tommy's days for proposing. He always proposes on Tuesdays and Thursdays during the season.
And you didn't accept him, I hope?
Oh, I make it a point never to accept Tommy. That is why he goes on proposing. Of course, as you didn't show up this morning, I very nearly said yes. It would have been an excellent lesson, both for him and for you, if I had. Might have taught you both some better manners.
Bother, Tommy Trafford. Tommy is a silly little ass. I love you.
I know. And I'm sure you might have told me before. I'm sure I had given you heaps of opportunities.
Mabel, be serious. Please do be serious.
That is exactly the sort of thing a man always says to a girl before he has married her. He never says it afterwards.
Mabel, I have told you that I love you. Couldn't you say that you love me in return?
Oh, you silly Arthur. If you knew anything about anything, you would know that I adore you. Everyone in London knows it except you. It is a public scandal the way I adore you. I've been going about for the past 6 months, telling the whole of society I adore you. I want you consent to have anything to say to me. I feel so happy. At least, I feel so happy I'm quite sure I have no character left at all.
Oh dear. Do you know I was awfully afraid of you refusing me?
But you have never yet been refused by anyone, have you, Arthur? I can't imagine anyone refusing you.
Of course I'm not nearly good enough for you, Mabel.
I'm so glad, darling. I was afraid you were.
And I am a little over 30.
Oh, but dear, you look weeks younger than that.
Oh, how good of you to say so. And I think it is only fair to tell you now I am fearfully extravagant.
Well, so am I, Arthur, so we're sure to agree. Now I must go and speak to Gertrude.
Oh, must you really?
Yes.
Oh. Now do tell her I wish to speak to her particularly. I've been waiting all morning for either her or Robert.
Do you mean to say you didn't come here expressly to propose to me?
No. That was a flash of genius.
Oh, you're first.
My last.
Delighted to hear it. Now don't stir. I shall be back in 5 minutes, and don't fall into any temptations while I'm away.
Dear Mabel, while you're away, there are none. And it makes me horribly dependent on you.
Oh, good morning, Gertrude. How pretty you were looking. Gertrude, how pale you were looking. It is quite becoming.
Good morning, Lord Goring.
Good morning, Lady Chiltern.
I shall meet you in the conservatory, under the second palm tree on the left.
Second on the left?
Yes, the usual palm tree.
Lady Chiltern, I have some very good news to tell you. Mrs. Cheveley gave me up Robert's letter and I burnt it. Robert is safe.
Oh, safe! Oh, I'm so glad of that. Oh, what a good friend you are to him, to us.
There is only one person now to be said to be in any danger at all now.
Who's that?
Yourself.
Are they? In danger, what do you mean?
Danger is too strong a word. I shouldn't have used it. But I have something to tell you that may distress you, that terribly distresses me. You wrote to me a beautiful, womanly letter saying that you trusted me, that you wanted my help. Well, Mrs. Cheveley got a hold of that letter.
What use is it to her? Why should she not have it?
Lady Chiltern, I will be quite frank with you. Mrs. Cheveley puts a certain construction on that letter and proposes to send it to your husband.
But what construction could she put on it? Oh, not that. I'm not that. If I, in trouble and wanting your help, trusting you, propose to come to you that you may advise me, assist me. Oh, are there women so horrible as that? And she proposes to send it to my husband. Tell me what happened. Tell me all that happened.
Well, Mrs. Cheveley was concealed in a room adjoining to the library where I was. I thought the woman coming to see me was yourself. Robert came in unexpectedly. A chair or something fell in the other room. Robert stormed his way in and discovered her. We had a terrible scene. I still thought the woman was yourself. Robert left me in anger. After that point, Mrs. Cheveley got a hold of my letter. When or how, I'm not sure.
At what hour did this happen?
Roughly at 10:30. And now I propose that we tell Robert the whole thing at once.
You want me to tell Robert that the woman you expected last night was not Mrs. Cheveley but myself? That it was I whom you thought was concealed in a room in your house at 10:30 at night? You want me to tell him that?
I think it is better that he should know the exact truth.
Oh, I couldn't.
May I try?
No.
You are wrong, Lady Chiltern.
No. The letter must be intercepted, that is all. But how can I do it? Letters arrive from every moment of the day. The secretaries open them and hand them to him. I dare not ask the servants to bring me his letters. It would be impossible. Why don't you tell me what to do?
Pray be calm, Lady Chiltern, and answer the following questions I'm about to put to you. You said his secretaries opened his letters, did you not?
Yes.
Who is his secretary today? It's Mr. Trafford, isn't it?
No, Mr. Montford, I think.
Can you trust him?
How do I know?
He would do anything you would ask of him, wouldn't he?
I think so.
Your letter was on a pink notepaper. He would be able to see such a letter by the colour.
I suppose so.
Is he in the house now?
Yes.
Then I shall go to him immediately, saying that a certain letter is to be forwarded to Robert today on a pink notepaper, and it must not reach him. Robert is coming. He's got the letter in hand. It is already arrived.
You have saved his life. What have you done with mine?
I want you. I trust you. I am coming to you. Gertrude. Oh, my love, is this true? Do you really want me and trust me? So it was for me to come to you, not for you to write of coming to me. Oh, this letter of yours, Gertrude, makes me feel that nothing that the world may do could hurt me now. Do you want me, Gertrude?
Yes.
You trust me, Gertrude?
Yes.
Why did you not add that you loved me?
Oh, because I loved you.
Gertrude, you don't know how I feel. When Montford passed me this letter across the table, he had opened it by mistake, I suppose, without looking at the writing on the envelope, and I read it. I did not care what disgrace or punishment was in store for me. I only thought, you loved me still.
There is no disgrace in store for you, nor any public shame. Mrs. Cheveley has handed over to Lord Goring the document that was in her possession, and he has destroyed it.
Are you sure of this, Gertrude?
Yes, Lord Goring has just told me.
Then I am safe. Oh, what a wonderful thing it is to be safe. For 2 days I have been in terror. I am safe now. How did Arthur destroy my letter? Tell me.
He burned it.
How I wish I had been there to see that one sin of my youth burning to ashes. How many men there are in modern life who would like to see their past burn to white ashes before them. Is Arthur still here?
Yes, he's in the conservatory.
I am so glad I made that speech in the house last night. So glad. I made it thinking that public disgrace would be the result, but it has not been so.
Public honour has been the result.
Yes, I think so. I fear so, almost. For although I am safe from detection, although every proof against me has been destroyed, I suppose, Gertrude, I suppose I ought to retire from public life.
Oh, yes, Robert, you should do that. It is your duty to do that.
It is much to surrender.
It will be much to gain.
And you would be happy, living alone with me, abroad perhaps, or in the country, away from London, away from public life. You would have no regrets.
None, Robert.
And your ambition for me? You used to be ambitious for me.
My ambition? I have none now, but that we two may love each other. It was your ambition that led you astray. Let us not talk about ambition.
Arthur, I have to thank you for what you have done for me. I don't know how I can begin to repay you.
My dear fellow, I can tell you at once. At the present moment, under the usual palm tree, that is in the conservatory,
Lord Caversham.
Admirable father of mine really makes a habit of coming in at the wrong time. It's very heartless of him, very heartless indeed.
Good morning, Lady Chiltern. Warmest congratulations to you, Chiltern, on your excellent speech last night. I have just left the Prime Minister, and you are to have the vacant seat in the Cabinet.
The seat in the Cabinet?
Yes. Here is the Prime Minister's letter.
The seat in the Cabinet?
Certainly, sir. And you well deserve it too. You have got what we want so much in political life nowadays. High character, high principles, high moral tone. And high principles. Everything that you have not got, sir, and never will.
I don't like principles, father. I prefer prejudices.
I cannot accept this offer, Lord Caversham. I have made up my mind to decline it.
Decline it, sir?
It is my intention to retire at once from public life.
Decline a seat in the Cabinet and retire from public life? Never heard such damn nonsense in the whole course of my existence. Lady Chiltern, I beg your pardon. Chiltern, I beg your pardon. Don't grin like that, sir.
No, father.
Lady Chiltern, you are a sensible woman, the most sensible woman in London. The most sensible woman I know. Would you kindly prevent your husband from making such a... Would you kindly do that, Lady Chiltern?
I think my husband is right in his determination, Lord Caversham. I approve of it.
You approve of it? Good heavens.
I admire him for it. I admire him immensely for it. I have never admired him so much before. He is finer than even I thought him. You will go now and write your letter to the Prime Minister, won't you? Don't hesitate about it, Robert.
I suppose I had better go right at once. Such offers are not repeated. I will ask you to excuse me for a moment, Lord Caversham.
I may come with you, Robert, may I not?
Yes, Gertrude.
What is the matter with this family? Something wrong here, eh? Idiocy. Hereditary, I suppose. Both of them too, wife as well as husband. Very sad indeed. And they're not an old family, I can't understand it.
It is not idiocy, father, I assure you.
What is it then, sir?
It is only what we call nowadays a high moral tone, that is all.
Hate these newfangled names. Same thing as we used to call idiocy 50 years ago. Shan't stay in this house any longer.
Oh, just a minute, father. Second palm tree on the left, the usual palm tree.
What, sir?
Oh, the conservatory, father, the conservatory. There is someone there I should very much like for you to talk to.
What about, sir?
About me, father.
Not a subject upon which much eloquence is possible.
No, father. But the lady is like me. She doesn't care too much for eloquence in others. She thinks it rather loud. Lady Chiltern, why are you playing Mrs. Cheveley's cards?
I don't understand you.
Mrs. Cheveley tried to ruin your husband, either to drive him from public life or make him adopt a dishonorable position. For the latter tragedy you saved him, the former you are now thrusting on him. Why should you try to do the wrong Mrs. Cheveley tried to do and failed?
Lord Goring,
Lady Chiltern, allow me. You wrote to me once, saying that you trusted me and that you wanted my help. Well, now is the time you really want my help. Now is the time you've got to trust me, to trust my counsel and my judgment. You love Robert. Do you want to kill his love for you? What sort of existence will he have if you rob him of the fruits of his ambition? If you take from him the splendor of a great and noble political career? If you shut the doors of public life against him and condemn him to sterile failure, he who was made for such triumph and success. Women are not meant to judge us, but to forgive us when we need forgiveness. Pardon, not punishment, is their mission in life. Why should you scourge him with the rods of a sin done in his youth before he knew you, before he knew himself? A man's life is full of larger public issues, wider scope, greater ambitions. It is upon lines of intellect that a man's life progresses. Make no mistake, Lady Chiltern, a woman that can keep a man's love and love him in return has done all that anyone can do in the world.
But it is my husband himself who wishes to retire from public life. He feels it is his duty. It was he who first said so.
Rather than lose your love, Robert is prepared to do anything, wreck his whole career, as he's on the brink of doing now. He is making for you a terrible sacrifice. Take my advice, Lady Chiltern, and do not accept a sacrifice so great. If you do, you may live to repent it bitterly. Us men and women aren't supposed to receive sacrifices like this from each other. We are not worthy of them. Besides, Robert has been punished enough.
We've both been punished. I set him up too high.
Do not, for that very same reason, now set him down too low. If he has fallen from his altar, do not thrust him into the mire. Failure to Robert would be the very mire of shame. Power is his passion. He would lose everything, even his power to feel love. Your husband's life is in your hands. Your husband's love is in your hands. Don't marvel for him.
Here is the draft of my letter, Gertrude. Shall I read it to you?
Let me see it.
What are you doing?
A man's life is full of larger public issues, wider scope, greater ambitions. It is on lines of intellect that a man's life progresses. I've just learnt this and much else with it from Lord Goring. And I will not spoil your life for you, nor see you spoil it as a sacrifice to me, a useless sacrifice.
Gertrude.
You can forget. Men easily forget. And I forgive. That is how women help the world. I see that now.
My wife, my wife. Arthur, it seems that I am forever to be in your debt.
Your debt isn't to me, Robert. It is to Lady Chiltern.
I owe you much. And now what was it that you were going to ask me just now before Lord Caversham came in?
Robert, you are your sister's guardian, and I want your consent to my marriage to her.
Oh, I'm so glad, so glad.
Thank you, Lady Chiltern.
My sister to be your wife?
Yes.
I am very sorry, but I'm afraid it is quite out of the question. I have to think of Mabel's future happiness, and I don't think her happiness would be safe in your hands, and I cannot have her sacrificed.
Sacrificed?
Yes, utterly sacrificed. Loveless marriages are horrible, but there is one thing worse than an absolutely loveless marriage. A marriage in which there is love but on one side only, devotion on one side only, faith on one side only, and in which of two hearts one is sure to be broken.
But I love Mabel. No other woman has any place in my life.
Robert, if they love each other, why should they not be married?
Arthur cannot bring Mabel the love that she deserves.
What reason have you for saying that?
Do you really require me to tell you?
Certainly I do.
As you wish. When I called upon you yesterday evening, I found Mrs. Cheveley concealed in your rooms. It was between 10 and 11 o'clock at night. I do not wish to say anything more. Your relations with that woman have, as I said to you then, nothing whatsoever to do with me. I know you were engaged to be married to her once. The fascination she exercised upon you seems to have returned. You spoke to me of her as a woman pure and blameless, a woman whom you respected and admired. That may be so, but I cannot give my sister's life over into your hands. It would be wrong of me, Arthur. It would be unjust. Infamously unjust to Mabel.
I have nothing to say.
Robert, it was not Mrs. Cheveley whom Lord Goring expected last night.
Not Mrs. Cheveley? Who was it then?
Lady Chiltern.
It was your own wife. Robert, yesterday afternoon, Lord Goring told me that if ever I was in trouble, I could come to him for help, as he was our oldest and best friend. Later on, after that terrible scene in this room, I wrote to him, telling him that I trusted him, that I had need of him, that I was coming to him for help and advice. Yes, that letter. I didn't go to Lord Goring's after all. I felt that it is from ourselves alone that help can come. Pride made me think that. Mrs. Cheveley went. She stole my letter and sent it anonymously to you this morning. You should think that... Robert, I cannot tell you what she wished you to think.
What? Had I fallen so low in your eyes that you thought for a moment that I could have doubted your goodness? Gertrude, you were to me the white image of all good things, and sin could never touch you. Arthur, you may go to Mabel, and you have my best wishes. Oh, wait a minute. There is no name on the beginning of this letter. The brilliant Mrs. Cheveley does not seem to have thought of that. There really should be a name.
Let me write yours. If you are trust and need, you and none else.
Well, really, Lady Chiltern, I think I should have my own letter back.
No, you shall have Mabel.
Well, I hope she hasn't changed her mind. It's been nearly 20 minutes since I last saw her.
Lord Goring, I think your father's conversation much more improving than yours. And maybe you speak to Lord Caversham in future, and always under the usual country.
Dear.
What does this mean, sir? You don't mean to say that this clever, charming young lady has been so foolish as to accept you?
Oh, she has, Father. And Robert has accepted the seat in the cabinet.
I am very glad to hear that, sir. I congratulate you. If this country doesn't go to the dogs or the radicals, we shall have you Prime Minister one day.
Luncheon is on the table, my lady.
You'll stay to luncheon, won't you, Lord Caversham?
With pleasure. And I'll drive you down to Downing Street afterwards, Chiltern. You have a great future before you, a great future. Wish I could say the same for you, sir. But your career will have to be entirely domestic.
Yes, Father. I prefer it domestic.
And if you don't make this young lady an ideal husband, I shall cut you off with a shilling.
An ideal husband? Oh, I don't think I like the sound of that. Sounds like something in the next world.
What do you want him to be then, dear?
Oh, he can be what he chooses. All I want him to be, but all I want to be, that is a real wife to him.
Upon my word, there is a good deal of common sense to that.
Aren't you coming in, Robert?
Gertrude, is it love that you feel for me? Or is it merely pity?
It is love, Robert. Love and only love. For both of us, a new life is beginning.